Welcome to Terrified Tales, where things are about to get unsettling. Before we dive deeper into the darkness, make sure to like and subscribe. Let us know where you're listening from and what time it is. Are you brave enough to be here at night? Now, relax and let the fear take hold. Story 1. The evening air had a peculiar crispness to it, one that felt almost foreign despite the warmth of the party unfolding within the grand, sprawling mansion. The house itself, an old, imposing structure perched high on a hill, seemed to shiver in anticipation of the New Year's celebration. From its polished windows, the shimmering lights of the city far below twinkled like distant stars, far removed from the laughter and clinking glasses that echoed inside. Inside, the mansion hummed with excitement, and yet there was something unsettling beneath the surface. The guests, a group of college friends reunited after years apart, all gathered in the grand ballroom, their chatter and laughter blending with the sound of the live band playing a jazzy tune in the background. The mansion's high ceilings, adorned with garlands and twinkling fairy lights, seemed to stretch into infinity, casting the guests in an almost dreamlike haze. Though the air was thick with merriment, there was something about the place that made them uneasy. Maybe it was the location, isolated from the rest of the world, perched alone atop the hill. Or maybe it was the house itself, a sprawling labyrinth of rooms, corridors, and creaking staircases that felt more like a place of memories than a modern residence. It had once been the home of a wealthy industrialist, a name none of them could recall, and it had remained vacant for decades until tonight. The friends had been excited to reunite here. They'd planned this getaway months ago, a nostalgic reunion to ring in the new year. But as they settled into the old home, something about the place was undeniably strange. None of them could quite place it. At first, they dismissed it as merely a product of the mansion's grandeur, its age, its secluded nature, and perhaps the oddities of its history. But even the most enthusiastic among them felt a twinge of discomfort every time they ventured into the deeper corners of the house. The lights flickered slightly when they first entered, though they never quite went out. The air, though warm, carried an odd chill, like it had been trapped inside the walls for too long. And every now and then there was a soft noise, like a low hum coming from some distant part of the house. "I swear," one of them, Matt, said with a chuckle as he poured himself a drink, "it's like this house has a mind of its own. You'd think we were in a haunted mansion." The others laughed, but their laughter faltered as they looked around the room. The place was so vast, its silence so deep, it almost felt as though the house were listening. "Haunted?" Claire replied, her voice tinged with mock worry. "Maybe we should just leave before midnight. I'm not a fan of creepy old houses, especially not on New Year's Eve." Her eyes scanned the room nervously, though it was hard to pinpoint why. The mansion's shadows were long, stretching across the walls like dark fingers reaching toward them. "Oh, come on," James interjected, always the skeptic. "We're here to have fun, not to get spooked by a few creaky floorboards." But even he couldn't deny the odd sensation that something was off, that they were being watched, not by anything human, but by the house itself, its ancient walls, remembering things they weren't supposed to. Outside, the weather had begun to change. The night sky had been clear when they arrived, but now a thin veil of fog was creeping over the hill, curling up from the valley below. A storm seemed to be brewing in the distance, the wind whispering through the trees, carrying with it a foreboding sense of dread. "Seems like the storm's catching up with us," Matt commented, his eyes flicking toward the window as the first drops of rain began to patter against the glass. As the evening wore on, the group grew more animated, the energy picking up as midnight approached. But despite the growing excitement, an undercurrent of unease lingered, palpable in the way they moved around the house, hastily with glances over their shoulders. Charlotte, one of the quieter friends, stood by the window for a moment, staring into the dark abyss of the forest surrounding the mansion. The shadows seemed to shift unnaturally, as if something was moving within them. But when she blinked, the shadows were still. "Ready for the countdown?" James called, his voice cutting through her thoughts. Charlotte nodded, shaking off the unease, and joined the others in the grand hall. They gathered around, drinks in hand, eyes fixed on the clock. The air grew heavier as the countdown began. 10, 9, 8. And then, at exactly 1 second to midnight, the lights flickered. The house groaned as if it were shifting, and the clock froze. As the minutes tick away toward midnight, the mood inside the mansion shifts from excitement to an uneasy anticipation. The group of friends gathers in the grand ballroom, where the rich golden light of chandeliers casts long shadows across the polished floor. The celebration continues. There's laughter, clinking glasses, and the clamor of music from the live band. But despite the festive atmosphere, something in the air feels wrong. It's not an obvious thing, just a subtle shift, like a cloud passing across the moon. The mansion feels too still, too ancient, its walls seeming to hum with memories that it doesn't want to forget. The hosts, a mysterious couple who own the mansion, had long since disappeared into the background, leaving the group to enjoy their final moments before the clock struck 12. The mansion looms around them, almost like it's watching, its eyes hidden in the walls, waiting for something. The windows, large and expansive, allow them to see the storm brewing on the horizon, the wind beginning to stir in the distance. There's an unspoken connection between the friends, an awareness that tonight, something different is in the air. Though their words are casual and light-hearted, the group's movements seem more hesitant now, as if they too can feel the house's strange pull. It is a night of celebration, yet the warmth from the wine feels colder as the clock nears midnight. Charlotte, the quietest member of the group, stands at the window, her eyes tracing the lines of the horizon. A gust of wind suddenly brushes past her, pulling at the curtains and causing them to flutter. She jumps slightly, a small gasp escaping her lips, and she rubs her arms as if trying to ward off the cold that settles deeper into her bones. The wind carries with it the distant sound of rain, softly at first, then louder, as if a storm is rushing toward them. The ominous sound grows louder, and yet no one seems to acknowledge it. A shiver runs down her spine, a feeling of being watched from beyond the walls, and she quickly turns back to the group, dismissing the thought. The others are caught up in their conversation, eagerly counting down the seconds. 9, 8, 7. The lights flicker, a quick flash that no one seems to notice except Charlotte. Her eyes dart to the chandelier above, where one of the lights flickers before returning to normal. It could have been a trick of the wiring. The house is old after all. But the sensation of unease refuses to leave her. At the far end of the room, Matt and James are arguing about some trivial matter, their voices growing louder with each passing second. Charlotte's gaze moves back to the window again. But this time, something is different. The wind has stopped. The rain outside, which had once been a gentle patter, now falls in a silence so complete it feels like the whole world has ceased to exist. The stars in the sky outside have lost their usual twinkle, now appearing unnaturally still, too bright, too clear, almost as if they are watching her back. She brushes it off, her mind trying to rationalize it, when suddenly a voice from behind her makes her jump. 10, 9, 8. The countdown begins. As the clock ticks closer to midnight, the room's temperature seems to drop. A coldness that doesn't belong in a party, doesn't belong in the warmth of friends and champagne, starts creeping over her skin. The shadows in the corners of the room seem to stretch longer, the warmth of the lights unable to chase away the dark. A strange tingling sensation spreads across her skin, creeping from her fingertips to the nape of her neck, a sensation that feels both unfamiliar and inevitable. Charlotte tries to brush it off, but her stomach tightens with unease. Suddenly, the clock strikes 12, but nothing happens. For a moment, there's silence, a heavy, thick silence that seems to blanket the room. The band stops playing mid-note, their instruments frozen in time. The fireworks outside are still, suspended in the sky, frozen in mid-air, their colors hanging like ghosts of a celebration that will never be. It's as if time has bent, paused, or simply forgotten to continue. Everyone in the room stands motionless, confused, staring at the clock, then out the window, then back again. The first laughs of disbelief echo in the room. "It's a glitch," someone calls out nervously. But there's no explanation for the frozen fireworks, no explanation for why the clock, though it struck 12, simply hasn't moved. It's like the world is holding its breath. The music doesn't resume. The lights flicker, but don't return to their usual warmth. And Charlotte's gaze is drawn back to the window where the sky above seems wrong. The stars are out of place, too bright, almost too close. As she stares at the scene, the chill of the room deepens. "Okay, something's wrong," Claire says, breaking the silence. She walks to the front door, trying to pull it open, but it doesn't budge. "It's stuck," she mutters. She rattles the handle, but it's like the house is unwilling to release them, unwilling to let them leave. Charlotte steps away from the window, her thoughts spinning. "It's nothing," she tells herself. But why does everything feel wrong? Why does the air taste so still, so empty? Why does the house feel alive, almost breathing, watching them? The group begins to murmur, and the reality of the situation starts to settle in. But still, none of them are willing to voice the one terrible truth that's creeping into their minds. Time has stopped. And then, just as quickly as it began, the sound of phones starts buzzing. Everyone pulls theirs out, only to find nothing. No text messages, no calls, and the screens show nothing but blackness. The connection to the outside world has been severed. Their attempts to reconnect with the world beyond the mansion are futile. Charlotte glances at her watch. 12, yeah. Nothing has changed. "Okay, something is seriously messed up here," Matt says, his voice wavering slightly. His usual bravado is fading, replaced by the stark realization that they are no longer in control. They are no longer in the world they once knew. The storm outside intensifies. The wind howls now, battering the windows, and the house creaks as if it's groaning, stretching under the pressure. Yet the group's disbelief grows as they try again and again to leave. Every door, every window leads them back to the same place, as if the mansion itself is playing a cruel game. They are stuck, suspended in time, and they don't know how to escape. And just then Charlotte hears it, faint at first, her own voice echoing from above, calling her name. The silence that follows midnight stretches on, suffocating the mansion. The group stands frozen, their faces lit by the dim glow of the chandelier overhead, their eyes flicking nervously between each other. There's an unsettling stillness in the air, a heavy pause that seems to press against their chests, making it difficult to breathe. Even the storm outside, which was once battering the mansion with fierce winds and rain, has become muffled, as if the world itself has been wrapped. In a cocoon of thick, unnatural silence, Charlotte rubs her arms to ward off the cold creeping into her skin. The hairs on the back of her neck stand on end, the feeling of being watched growing stronger, though she can't quite pinpoint from where. She's not sure if it's the oppressive atmosphere of the mansion, or if something else is making her feel this way. Maybe the whole situation is just too surreal. Still, something about the house feels different now, alive even, as though it's waking up, becoming aware of them. And there's that voice again, faint, almost imperceptible. Charlotte's heart skips a beat. She swivels her head, searching the room, but no one else seems to have heard it. Did anyone else hear that? She asks, her voice trembling slightly. Matt looks at her, brow furrowed. What are you talking about? There was a voice, she says, her tone urgent. I swear I heard someone calling my name. Claire laughs, though it lacks its usual cheer. You're hearing things. We've all been under a lot of stress tonight. First, the fireworks freeze, now this. It's probably the wind. But Charlotte isn't convinced. She can feel her pulse quickening, her heart hammering against her ribcage. The hairs on her arms are still standing on end, and the coldness that fills the air is making her feel trapped. Something isn't right. The voice sounded so close, as if it had come from the hallway. But when she looked, she saw nothing but shadowed walls and empty doorways. A moment of quiet, pregnant with tension, passes before Claire shrugs and goes to pour herself another drink. It's all just in our heads, she mutters. We're trapped in a house with no way out. It's a little unnerving, sure, but we're fine. But Charlotte can't shake the feeling. She stares into the darkness of the hallway again, her mind working overtime to piece together what's happening. The air feels heavy, and the house seems to hum, a low vibration that fills the room, as though the walls themselves are pulsing with life. Her eyes dart nervously from shadow to shadow, and then it happens again. This time it's clearer. Her name, a whisper so soft, yet distinct. Charlotte. The voice isn't just any voice, it's hers. It's coming from upstairs, from the second floor. The sound seems to travel from the very walls, curling around her, sending a ripple of dread through her body. It's unmistakable, her own voice, yet it's not coming from her mouth. It's coming from somewhere else, somewhere beyond her reach. Charlotte, the voice repeats, this time more urgently. She can hear the faint echo of it trailing off, as if someone is trying to call her from the darkness, urging her to follow. Her stomach twists into a knot. This isn't possible. The room is silent, save for the strange hum of the house. She turns to the others, eyes wide, trying to catch their gaze. But they seem unfazed. Matt is still fidgeting with his phone, which remains black and unresponsive, while Claire pours herself another drink, oblivious to Charlotte's distress. I heard it again, Charlotte says, voice barely above a whisper. The others don't even look up. It's me. It's my voice calling me. They still don't seem to understand the gravity of what she's saying. Matt finally looks up from his phone, a little irritated. Charlotte, you're freaking yourself out. It's just the house, man. It's old and it's creaky. It's probably a draft or something. But Charlotte isn't convinced. Her mind is racing, trying to piece together what's happening. Why is it her voice? Why does it feel so real, so personal? Could it be a prank? No, this feels wrong. She knows the house is old, but nothing has ever felt so alive. Come on, let's just go upstairs, she suggests, forcing herself to remain calm. We need to find a way out of this. The others exchange uncomfortable glances, but no one moves. I'm going, Charlotte insists, her voice firm despite the rising panic inside her. She takes a step toward the stairs, her feet dragging heavily over the floorboards. With every step she takes, the air grows colder, as though she's walking deeper into the heart of the house itself. The stairs creak beneath her weight, and the shadows stretch longer with every passing moment. The group watches her, but no one follows. They're paralyzed, rooted to the spot by some unseen force. The staircase is steep, the wood worn smooth by time, but as Charlotte ascends, a strange sensation grips her chest. The temperature around her drops even further, and the air thickens, almost suffocating. Her breath comes out in shallow bursts, her heart pounding in her chest. The whispering voice is louder now, closer. She reaches the top of the stairs, but there's no sign of anything out of the ordinary. No one is there. The hallway is dark, the only light coming from the flickering chandelier behind her. The echo of her footsteps is deafening, like she's walking alone in a void, a world that no longer knows what time is. It's unnerving how the house seems to stretch on forever, each room identical to the next, but every shadow holds a new, deeper mystery. The voice is louder now, as if beckoning her forward. "Charlotte," it calls again, clearer, almost desperate this time. Charlotte takes another step forward, drawn by the sound. Her hand grips the cold wooden banister, the old wood smooth and worn under her fingers. She turns a corner into a hallway lined with doors, each one closed, leading to rooms filled with shadow and silence. And there, at the end of the hall, she sees something unsettling. A figure stands at the far door, a shadowy silhouette, indistinct but somehow familiar. The figure is tall, but something about it makes Charlotte's heart race. It's as if the shadow is waiting for her, watching her with silent, endless patience. Her pulse quickens. The air feels suffocating. She calls out, but the figure doesn't move. It doesn't speak. Charlotte inches closer, unable to tear her eyes away from the figure that mirrors her every move, as though it knows her, as though it is her. Her breath catches in her throat. The moment stretches out, and she knows deep in her bones that she's about to discover something that will change everything. Then the figure vanishes. In the blink of an eye, it's gone. The door opens, but there's no one inside, just an empty room, and the voice, faint now, calls her name once more. The room Charlotte stands in is silent, save for the soft creaking of the house, its old bones shifting in the wind. She stares at the door, confused, her heart pounding as the unsettling sensation of being watched deepens. The voice has disappeared, and the figure at the end of the hallway is now gone, leaving only an eerie emptiness that seems to stretch before her. Was it her imagination? Was she just hearing things? But Charlotte knows what she felt. The house is alive, and it's playing with her. She takes a step back, heart racing, ready to turn around and rejoin the others. The silence is oppressive, and as she moves, the house seems to swallow her presence, like a deep, dark void pulling her deeper into its grasp. She grips the banister tightly, the wood colder than it was moments ago, and turns to descend the stairs. As she reaches the bottom, she hears it again, a sound, a faint, soft trickling noise. It's like the sound of water moving through the walls, an insidious hum, almost too quiet to hear. At first, Charlotte assumes it's just the house settling, an old mansion with old pipes. But then she realizes that the sound is growing, spreading, seeping from the walls into the air. She freezes, her breath catching in her throat. It's water rising from somewhere beneath the house. "Matt!" Charlotte calls out, her voice wavering as she turns back toward the group. "Claire, James?" But there is no response. The hum of water is louder now, and as Charlotte steps back into the ballroom, she sees something she hadn't noticed before. A small puddle of water on the polished wood floor, reflecting the chandelier light in twisted, rippling patterns. "Guys!" She calls again, but no one answers. Her heart begins to pound again as the sound of the water intensifies. It's as if the house is breathing, the sound like a living thing moving through the walls. She walks toward the puddle cautiously, every instinct telling her to leave, to run. But she's rooted to the spot. How did it get there? The floor is dry, yet this small pool of water has materialized out of nowhere. A soft, gurgling sound rises from beneath the floorboards, and the puddle grows larger. The wood around it begins to darken, the edges soaked with creeping moisture. More water follows, as if the house is leaking from within its very heart. Charlotte takes a step back, eyes wide with disbelief. Her mind races, but she cannot make sense of it. The house is old, yes, but this is something else. This is not normal. Suddenly, The lights flicker. Bright, then dim again, as if the house itself is losing power. The temperature drops even further, and Charlotte shivers, her breath turning into mist in front of her. As the puddle spreads, she looks around the room. Everything feels wrong. The once grand, welcoming space has transformed into a lair of shadows, the elegant decorations now seeming to mock the group's attempt at celebration. The whispers begin again, barely audible at first, but quickly growing louder, more distinct. In the darkness of the hallway, a door slams shut on its own, the sound echoing through the house. Charlotte whips her head toward the noise, her heart skipping a beat. The voices, now a choir of whispers, call out from all corners of the house, and the sound of rushing water intensifies. Panic sets in. It's rising. The water is rising. She runs to the living room, the sound of her footsteps now drowned by the deafening hum of the flood. The entire house seems to be sinking, water creeping up the walls, slipping under doors. The mansion, as if alive, is reacting to them, flooding in response to their presence, like it's trying to drown them in its twisted grip. Charlotte rushes through the rooms, her breath ragged, and finally she finds the others in the kitchen. They're staring. At the door, water has begun seeping under the threshold, and the floor is slick with it. The hum of the house continues to grow, and the walls themselves seem to tremble, shaking with the force of something much larger than any storm. "We need to get out of here," Charlotte says, voice trembling. "The water, it's everywhere." Matt, still holding his phone in his hand, looks at her with wide eyes. "What the hell is happening?" His voice cracks as he looks around, searching for answers. This is impossible." Claire and James stand in stunned silence. They can see the floodwaters now creeping along the floor, inching toward them, making the familiar room unrecognizable. The hum is deafening now, vibrating through the very structure of the house. The water is alive, and it's getting worse. Suddenly, with a violent lurch, the house groans, a deep, unsettling sound, as the floodwaters rise higher, now covering the floor completely. The once beautiful kitchen is now submerged in a grotesque, swirling pool of water. The group stumbles backward, their eyes wide with fear, as they realize they're running out of room. The house is sinking, and they are trapped inside. "We have to leave," Matt gasps, his eyes darting around in panic. "We can't," Charlotte says, shaking her head. "Every door, every window. It's like the house won't let us out." She looks toward the entrance, where water now laps at the edges of the doorframe, creeping closer to them with every passing second. The walls groan again, and the floodwaters seem to rise even faster. The eerie whispers grow louder, more insistent, and they hear, somewhere in the distance, the sound of laughter, a low, mocking, ghostly laugh that echoes through the house. The floor beneath them begins to warp, the wood buckling and rising as the water spreads deeper. The house itself is no longer a home. It is a prison, one that is slowly suffocating them, drowning them in its endless flood. Charlotte's mind races as the water continues to rise. The house is alive, yes, but it's more than that. It's been waiting for them, feeding on their fears, drawing them in until they were trapped, caught in the rising tide. "We need to find the source of the water," she says, her voice shaking but determined. "There has to be a way out. We can't just let it drown us." But as she turns to head back toward the hallway, the floor cracks beneath her feet, and a wall of water surges toward them, rising from beneath the house's floorboards like a great, hungry beast. The house groans once again, its ancient timbers creaking and bending as the floodwaters rise higher, lapping at their ankles, then their knees. The air feels heavy, thick with the smell of damp wood and decay. The faint whispers, now louder, surround them like an invisible force, filling the mansion with a chilling presence that can't be ignored. Charlotte's breath comes in short, panicked bursts. "We need to get out now!" she yells, her voice tight with fear. But it seems like the words are swallowed by the house's oppressive atmosphere. The flood continues to creep upward, and they're running out of time. Matt stumbles backward, eyes wide with terror. Where are we supposed to go? Everything's locked up. The doors, the windows, nothing will open. The once familiar house now feels alien, its rooms unrecognizable, warped by the water. The floorboards are soaked, the walls bending as the flood creeps toward the ceiling. The sound of the water rushing through the house is deafening now, a relentless force that drowns out everything else. And then, through the ever-rising water, they hear it, a soft cry, barely audible at first. At first, Charlotte thinks it's just the wind, or perhaps the sound of the house settling. But then the cry rises, becoming more distinct. A child's wail, desperate and hollow. She whips her head toward the sound, her pulse racing. The others hear it too. Claire's face turns pale as she grabs Charlotte's arm, her voice shaking. "Did you hear that?" Claire whispers, her voice trembling with disbelief. Matt looks around the room, his eyes darting toward the hallway. Who's crying? The cry is followed by another, louder now, closer, and Charlotte's heart skips a beat. "It's coming from upstairs," she says almost to herself, as her eyes lock on the staircase. The floodwaters are still rising, but the sound of the child's wail, now accompanied by muffled whispers and the scraping sound of nails against wood, is impossible to ignore. Something is down there, something that shouldn't be. Without thinking, Charlotte begins to move toward the stairs, her feet slipping in the water. "We have to check. It might be someone who needs help." "No," Matt shouts, grabbing her arm. "It's a trick. It has to be. The house is messing with us. We need to leave now." But Charlotte pulls away, determination in her eyes. The cry is too real, too painful for her to ignore. She can't explain why, but something inside her pushes her forward. The house is alive. It's drawing them in, and she has to face whatever is calling out to them. The others follow reluctantly, though they're clearly on edge, their every step hesitant as the water swirls around them, pulling at their legs. They reach the staircase, and Charlotte's pulse quickens. The shadows at the top of the stairs are unnaturally deep, as if the house is swallowing the light, and the child's cry grows louder still. "Stay close," Charlotte warns as they begin to ascend the stairs, their feet sinking into the wet wood. The once sturdy staircase groans under their weight, and the floodwater is creeping up the steps now, climbing higher with each passing moment. Halfway up the stairs, they hear something else, a scratching, like claws dragging across the floor. It's getting closer. Charlotte looks over her shoulder, but the others are still behind her, their faces pale with fear. They can't see it, but she can feel it. The weight of the house pressing in on them, urging them to hurry, to turn around. But she can't stop. Not now. At the top of the stairs, they find themselves in a long hallway, the walls covered with portraits of long-dead ancestors. Their eyes, the painted eyes, seem to follow them, watching, judging. The hallway is suffocating, the shadows too thick, and the whispers are louder now, all around them. The child's cries are now mixed with a chorus of soft voices, murmuring indistinctly. It's as if the very walls of the house are speaking to them, repeating their names in soft, mocking tones. "We need to leave, Charlotte," James says, his voice cracking. "This isn't real. We're being hunted. We have to get out of here." But Charlotte isn't listening anymore. The hallway before her stretches on endlessly, and at the far end, there's a door slightly ajar, the faintest sliver of light, escaping from within. The cries are now deafening. The child's voice is desperate, almost frantic, and Charlotte knows with a sinking feeling that they have to go through that door. She steps forward, the water now up to her knees, and pushes the door open, the wood protesting with a creak. Inside, the room is small and dark. save for the pale light emanating from a corner. It's a child's room. At least it was. The furniture is broken, the floor soaked with water, and the walls are covered with faded wallpaper depicting a child playing in a field. But the air is heavy, stagnant, foul. And there, in the far corner, standing next to a cracked window, is the figure of a small child. The figure is facing away from them, its small form huddled as though it's waiting. Charlotte steps forward, trembling. "Hello? Are you?" The child turns. Its face is blank, pale, lifeless, with dark eyes that hold nothing but emptiness. It's as if the child is trapped between this world and another. Its mouth opens, but no sound comes out. Suddenly, the room shudders violently. The child's image distorts, its face morphing into something grotesque, something wrong. The once sweet, innocent figure is now twisted, its eyes wide and bulging, its mouth stretched into an unnatural grin. The air thickens with the sound of water sloshing, and the temperature plummets. The house groans, its foundations shifting as the figure steps toward them, its movements jerky and unnatural. And the whispers in the walls grow louder, more demanding. The child reaches out, and as its hand nears Charlotte, the room suddenly explodes with a terrifying scream, a child's scream, distorted and otherworldly. The group stumbles backward, but the door slams shut behind them, trapping them in the flooded room with the horrific apparition. The child's laugh rings in, their ears low and mocking. The room feels suffocating as the ghostly child's distorted laugh echoes through the air. Charlotte's heart hammers in her chest, and the others are frozen, eyes wide with terror. The child, no thing, is still standing in the corner, its form shifting and twisting like a nightmare made real. Its movements are jerky, unnatural, its eyes locked onto them with an unsettling, malevolent intent. The whispers around them become louder, almost deafening now, as if the walls themselves are alive, eager to reveal their secrets. The house is feeding off their fear. Charlotte can feel it, the suffocating pressure of something ancient and dark, and she knows, deep in her gut, that this isn't just a house. It's a prison built on forgotten blood. "Get back!" Matt shouts, his voice cracking as he pushes against the door, but it's no use. The door won't budge. The door, they're trapped. The child's figure jerks toward them, its mouth stretching open wider than what seems possible, revealing rows of sharp, broken teeth. The air around them grows thicker, colder, and the water at their feet starts to churn, swirling like a violent whirlpool. It feels like the house itself is pulling them in, tugging at their limbs, threatening to drown them in the endless flood. "Think," Charlotte gasps, pulling herself away from the horror of the child's distorted face. "We have to stop this." Desperation and fear cloud her thoughts, but something in her mind clicks. The house, the way it feels, the way it's reacting to them, it's not random. The child, the whispers, the flooding, they're all connected to something deeper, something older than any of them could have imagined. With a sudden, sharp clarity, Charlotte remembers the old journal she found earlier, the one her grandfather had kept, detailing the strange occurrences and histories tied to their family. The journal spoke of the mansion's dark past, of ancient rituals and forbidden rites tied to the land itself, to the souls bound beneath it. The land where the mansion was built had once belonged to a long-forgotten civilization, a people who practiced rituals of life and death, binding their souls to the earth, to the house, in exchange for power. But not all of those rituals had been respected. One had gone wrong. Her eyes scan the room and they settle on the walls. They're covered with symbols, faded and barely discernible beneath layers of grime and water. Some of the symbols are the same ones she's seen in the journal. She moves closer, heart pounding, feeling the overwhelming pressure of the house, of the entity within it, pressing on her chest. The child's distorted face is still grinning, but it doesn't approach. Instead, it stares, its twisted mouth twitching. It's waiting. "I think I know what's happening," Charlotte whispers, more to herself than anyone else. "What are you talking about?" Claire asks, her voice trembling. She's clutching the doorframe, her knuckles white from the fear that has taken hold of her. This isn't real. This has to be some kind of nightmare." "It's not a nightmare," Charlotte replies, her voice growing steadier as she pushes forward. "This house, it's alive. It was built on the bones of the people who lived here before. They performed rituals. They bound souls to the land. But one ritual went horribly wrong. One spirit was angered, and it was cursed to haunt the house forever." The others stare at her in shock, but Charlotte feels the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. The house, the child, the flooding, it's all part of the same thing. The house is alive, yes, but it's not just feeding on them. It's holding them. "It's trying to drag us into its past," she continues, her voice growing firmer with each word. "The spirits are still here, trapped, unable to leave. They need to be freed." Matt looks at her, his face pale. "But how? How do we stop it?" Charlotte's eyes fall on the symbols etched into the walls. The symbols, she realizes, are more than just markings. They're part of the ritual. They were created to bind and trap. And the floodwaters, the rising tide that's slowly consuming them, is just a manifestation of the spirits trying to claim them, to drag them into the eternal cycle. "There's a way to stop it," Charlotte says, her heart racing with a mix of fear and determination. "We have to break the bond. Destroy the heart of the house. The rituals, they were meant to protect the house, to keep the spirits bound to it. But if we break it, we might be able to set them free." "What do you mean by the heart?" James asks, his voice still shaking with fear. Charlotte looks around the room, her gaze landing on the floor. Beneath their feet, the water is swirling faster, rising higher. It's as if the house is anticipating what they're about to do. It's listening, waiting. "The heart," she says slowly, her eyes scanning the room. "It's where the ritual began. It's buried deep beneath the house, at the center of all the rituals, the heart of the curse. If we destroy it, we might be able to sever the connection. We might be able to free the spirits." The others exchange fearful glances. They can feel the weight of what she's saying. It's their only hope, but it comes with a terrifying price. As if to answer her, the child's figure jerks forward, its arms stretching out toward them with unnatural speed. The water surges with a sudden, violent force, and the house shudders again. The air grows heavy with the scent of decay, and the whispers grow louder, more demanding. The floodwaters rise faster, pressing them toward the center of the room, where the symbols on the walls glow with an unearthly light. "We don't have much time," Charlotte says urgently. "We have to find the heart of the house and destroy it before we're consumed by it." But as they turn to leave, the room darkens. The very air around them thickens with malevolent energy. The house seems to close in, its walls contracting, and the water rises higher, faster, its cold fingers wrapping around their legs, pulling them deeper into the nightmare. The water is rising. The house is alive, and every step the group takes feels like they are sinking deeper into the nightmare. The walls groan, the floorboards creak, and the whispers are relentless. Every corner they turn, they feel the house's eyes on them, watching, waiting for them to make a mistake. Charlotte leads the way, her determination now fused with an overwhelming sense of dread. She knows the ritual must be stopped, but the closer they get to the heart of the house, the more intense the energy around them becomes. The air thickens, and the very walls seem to pulse with a malignant, unnatural rhythm, like a beating heart. That doesn't belong in a house. The hallway ahead of them is now warped, the wood of the floor buckling, twisting, as if the mansion itself is trying to hold them back. The once well-lit, expansive hallways are now darker, colder, their familiar structure distorted, like the house has taken on a life of its own and is reshaping itself in response to their movements. "Is anyone else feeling this?" Claire asks, her voice trembling. Her hand grips Matt's tightly as they move forward, but her eyes scan the walls nervously, as if expecting something to jump out of the shadows at any moment. "Yeah," Matt says, his voice tight. "It's like the house is alive, like it's trying to stop us." "Exactly," Charlotte says, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. She knows they're getting closer. The energy in the house is thick, almost suffocating, and every step they take seems to add to the mounting pressure. The mansion is reacting to them, and the floodwaters are rising faster now, pouring into the hallway, creeping toward their ankles. They continue to push forward, deeper into the mansion, though every instinct is telling them to turn back. The house is twisting around them, warping in ways they cannot explain. The floor beneath them has shifted completely, and the hallways now seem to stretch on endlessly, a disorienting maze that's impossible to navigate. And then, just as they turn a corner, something happens. The house changes. The walls shudder violently, and for a split second, Charlotte feels an overwhelming sense of vertigo, as if the world itself has tilted, as though time has warped. The hallway in front of them is suddenly gone. It's not just empty, it's transformed. The floor, once wooden and sturdy, is now a slick black surface, and the walls are covered with strange glowing symbols, far more intricate and complex than anything they've seen before. "What the hell is this?" James breathes, stepping back in shock. Charlotte reaches out, her fingers brushing against the symbols. As soon as her hand makes contact, a jolt of energy pulses through her, so cold and so powerful that it almost knocks her off her feet. She gasps, pulling her hand back, and in that moment she realizes something. The house isn't just a haunted mansion, it's a living entity, and they are standing in its very heart, its core, the place where the ritual began. But before she can say anything, the ground beneath them trembles. The water, now rising violently, crashes against the walls, flooding the hallway with an unnatural speed, as though the house is opening its jaws to swallow them whole. "Run!" Charlotte shouts, her voice cracking, but it's too late. The water surges forward, sweeping them all off their feet. For a moment they are thrown into complete chaos, flailing against the current, trying to grab onto anything solid. But the house has no intention of letting them escape. As the flood pulls them down the hallway, the walls seem to close in, narrowing as the house itself tries to trap them. The symbols on the walls glow brighter, and Charlotte realizes that they are no longer in a house. They are in the middle of the ritual itself, trapped within the very magic that bound the mansion to this twisted dimension. With no choice but to keep moving, they stumble forward, the water now nearly up to their necks. The flood is no longer a natural phenomenon. It's a manifestation of the house's power, designed to pull them under, to drown them in the house's curse. Then, just as it seems like they can't move any further, something breaks through. The water, the pulse of the house. A figure appears, a shadow, taller and darker than any they've seen before, moving through the floodwaters with a slow, deliberate pace. It doesn't walk. It floats, its limbs elongated, its body dark and ethereal, like a figure composed entirely of shadows and mist. The figure seems to emerge directly from the symbols on the walls, like it was conjured by them. For a moment the group freezes, staring at the figure, unable to look away. Its face is a twisted mockery of a human's, hollow eyes, a grotesque grin, and a mouth that stretches unnaturally wide. The figure's presence fills the hallway with an unnerving sense of malevolence. and it feels as if the entire house is watching them through this figure. Without warning, the figure raises its arm and the water surges forward, pushing them back toward the center of the hallway. It's as though the house itself is forcing them to stand in place, to be judged by whatever this figure represents. "Stay back," Matt screams, pushing against the water, but it's no use. The flood is relentless and the figure is coming closer. Charlotte steps forward, her voice trembling but filled with determination. "We can't fight it. We need to destroy the heart. We need to end this ritual." The figure pauses for a moment, and then it vanishes, disappearing into the shadows of the hallway. The water stops rising, but the pressure in the house remains, a heavy, unyielding force that fills every inch of space around them. Charlotte knows now, without a doubt, that they are standing at the center of the curse. This is the heart of the house, the core where all the rituals were performed, and it's the only place where they can end this nightmare. But with the ritual growing stronger, the house more alive than ever, they don't have much time left. "We have to move," Charlotte says urgently. "Before it's too late, we have to find the heart and destroy it, now." The house is fighting back, trying to trap them, trying to drown them in its power. But Charlotte and the others are determined to stop it, to end the nightmare once and for all. The only question now is whether they will be able to find the heart before the house consumes them. The mansion trembles beneath their feet, a low rumble echoing through the walls like the growl of a beast awakening from slumber. The floodwaters, though stagnant and cold, seem to surge with an unnatural energy, rising higher as the air thickens with the scent of decay. It's as if the house itself is alive, reacting to their every move with malice. Charlotte, her legs heavy from the water, struggles to keep moving, pushing forward with the others. The house is shifting around them, the hallways twisting and bending in ways that don't make sense, as though reality itself is warping and bending under the mansion's power. The water is no longer just an obstacle. It's a force that feels almost sentient, tugging at their legs, urging them to drown, to sink into the depths of the house's haunted core. "Where do we even go now?" Claire gasps, her voice barely audible over the sound of the rushing water. She's gripping Matt's arm tightly, but her wide eyes reflect the same growing sense of panic that's settling into the group. "We're never going to find a way out of here. We have to," Charlotte says, her voice more urgent than before. "We have to find the heart, the center of the house. It's the only way to stop it. We can't let it drag us into the water." But just as she speaks those words, the house seems to respond. The water begins to churn beneath them, its surface bubbling and rippling as if something is stirring within the depths. The house groans again, louder this time, as the walls seem to shift. The once smooth, familiar hallways are now distorted, twisted, like they've been rearranged by some unseen force. The floodwaters swirl violently around their ankles, and for a moment it feels as if the house itself is trying to swallow them whole. Then, from the swirling mass of water, something emerges. A figure, a shadow, but one that is far more solid than anything they've seen before. The thing moves with a slow, deliberate grace, its form shifting with the water, seamlessly merging with it. It's humanoid, but not fully. Its body is watery, its skin a slick, wet mass of liquid and flesh. Its limbs stretch and ripple with unnatural speed, like they don't quite belong to a body. The face, if it can even be called a face, is a featureless hollow, the eyes dark pools of shadow, and the mouth stretched wide into an unnatural grin. Matt lets out a strangled shout. "What the hell is that?" The thing doesn't respond. It simply advances, its feet gliding smoothly over the surface of the water, its body undulating like a liquid nightmare. It's not a creature made of flesh or bone, it's something otherworldly, something born of both water and death. It's as though the house itself has manifested this monstrosity, born from the cursed waters and the malevolent force that feeds off their fear. Before anyone can react, the creature lunges forward, its limbs stretching, its fingers long and spindly, like tendrils of water. The group tries to move, but the flood is rising faster now, pushing them back. The creature's form closes in, its wet body slipping through the water with terrifying speed. "Move!" Charlotte shouts, shoving Claire and Matt toward the hallway, but it's too late. The creature slams into James, its watery hand wrapping around his leg with unnatural strength. James screams, his voice cutting through the thick air, but the sound is muffled by the house's low groaning, as though the walls themselves are trying to drown him. The water pulls him in, dragging him toward the thing's massive watery maw. "No!" Claire screams, her voice panicked. "James!" Charlotte grabs Matt's arm, yanking him toward the stairwell. "We need to go! Now!" But it's impossible to move. The water is rising faster than they can run, swallowing the room, swallowing the hallways, and the thing's movements become more violent, more desperate, as it pulls James deeper into the flood. James's screams grow louder for a moment, and then abruptly the water silences him. The house quakes violently, and when the waters settle, the figure is gone. The flood recedes, leaving the group standing in a silence so deep it feels suffocating. Charlotte's breath comes in ragged gasps. Her chest tightens with panic, but she forces herself to focus. They're running out of time. James is gone. Matt whispers, his voice hollow, the fear in his eyes palpable. It took him. It took him. Charlotte stares into the now eerily still water, her mind racing. The house's curse is no longer just an unseen force. It's taking physical form. The water, the creatures, the haunting whispers, they are all part of the mansion's dark heart, its twisted need to feed and grow. And now, it has begun to consume them, one by one. "We have to find the heart," Charlotte repeats, her voice firm with a mix of fear and determination. "We can't stop until we destroy it." The house is shifting again, responding to their defiance, and the floodwaters begin to rise once more. But now, the creature isn't the only thing they have to worry about. The walls themselves are alive, bending and warping, shifting like the body of some ancient beast, and they can feel it closing in. "We'll never make it in time," Claire says, her voice breaking. "It's over, Charlotte. We can't outrun it." But Charlotte doesn't stop. She knows the only way to break the curse is to find the heart, the very core of the mansion's magic. It's the key to ending the nightmare, and if they don't find it, they will be lost forever. The water continues to rise, but now the flood is no longer just a physical force. It's a manifestation of the house's hunger, of the ritual's power, and it is alive, feeding off their fear, growing stronger by the second. As they rush through the flooded hallways, dodging the water's relentless pull, Charlotte feels the weight of the mansion pressing down on her, as though it's trying to bury her in its endless hunger. And in the distance, she hears it again, the faintest whisper, barely audible, but unmistakable. "Help us." It's coming from the heart of the house, and they are getting closer. The mansion is alive in ways that no one could have ever imagined. The house trembles beneath their feet, and every sound, the creaking of the walls, the low rumble from within, the ever-growing whispering voices, is a reminder that the very soul of the house is awake. It's no longer just a place. They are trapped within something alive, a sentient being that has been feeding off the souls of its past inhabitants. Charlotte leads the group forward, her heart pounding as the walls around them seem to stretch and distort, warping with the shifting floodwaters. The mansion's supernatural presence is so thick now that it feels like a physical weight pressing down on them, and every step they take feels like they're sinking deeper into the house's dark embrace. The water at their feet surges again, pushing them forward. pulling them deeper into the heart of the house, where the spirits that have been trapped here for centuries grow restless, their rage building with every passing second. They reach a long corridor, once regal with elaborate chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, but now twisted, darkened by the shadows of the house's haunting. The floodwaters are no longer merely rising, they are alive, churning and rippling like a monstrous force beneath the floorboards. Then, from the darkness ahead, they hear it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, almost methodical. The sound of someone, or something, walking in perfect sync with their own movements. Charlotte freezes, her breath catching in her throat. "Did you hear that?" she whispers. But there's no time to answer. The footsteps are growing louder, closer. They are not alone. A figure steps into the dim light at the far end of the hallway. It's a man, tall and thin, with a gaunt face and hollow, dark eyes that seem to pierce straight through them. His clothes are torn, his skin decayed, the color of dried ash, and the air around him feels cold, unnaturally cold. The light from the flickering chandelier casts his shadow long and twisted along the walls. He doesn't speak, but his presence is enough to make Charlotte's skin crawl. The house knows they are here. The house wants them. Suddenly, another figure appears, this time a woman, her form shrouded in tattered clothing. Her face is obscured by matted hair, but her eyes are wide open, empty, vacant. Her lips pulled into an eerie, silent scream. And then, a third figure steps forward, and another, until the hallway is filled with ghostly apparitions, each one frozen in a moment of torment, their faces contorted with pain, anger, and undying rage. Their eyes lock onto the group, and the whispers rise, becoming louder and more frantic. The air turns icy, and the walls seem to close in around them. Charlotte's heart races as she feels the weight of their gaze, the silent accusation in their eyes. "The souls," Matt says, his voice barely a whisper. "They've been trapped here." Charlotte nods, barely able to speak. "They're angry, and they want revenge." The spirits don't move at first. They just stand there, staring at the group, their forms flickering like flames caught in the wind. But Charlotte knows that the longer they stay in this cursed house, the more real these spirits will become. They're filling the air with their rage, and if they don't find the heart of the house soon, they will be consumed by it, by the spirit's wrath. The man with the hollow eyes steps forward, his mouth moving as if speaking, but no sound escapes. Instead, the words echo in their minds, a deep, guttural whisper that chills them to the bone. "Leave." But as soon as the words fade, the floodwaters surge with a violent force, pushing the group backward, forcing them deeper into the mansions. Barely. The water rises faster, pulling them toward the vengeful spirits, and Charlotte can feel the weight of the house's anger pressing in on them. The very air is charged with dark energy, and the whispers grow louder, swirling around them like a maelstrom of rage and pain. "You are not welcome." The woman's voice echoes in Charlotte's mind. "Leave this place before it consumes you." Claire stumbles backward, her breath coming in panicked gasps. "What do we do? How do we stop them?" Charlotte's eyes are fixed on the figures, on the ghostly faces that seem to be drawn to them, pulling them toward the heart of the house. She can feel the truth in their words. They are not welcome here. The mansion rejects them, the spirits hunger for them, and they are running out of time. "We have to get to the heart," Charlotte says, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "We can't let them drag us into the flood. If we destroy the heart, we can end this. We can free them." The spirits, as if sensing her resolve, shift again, their faces morphing into grotesque masks of agony and hatred. They move forward, their arms stretching toward them, their hands reaching, grasping, as though they are trying to pull them into the flood, to claim them as part of the mansion's soul. You cannot escape. The whispers rise, their voices now filling the entire house. This house is your grave, but Charlotte is not deterred. She can feel it now. The power of the house, the magnetic pull of the heart deep within the mansion. She can feel the ritual, the magic coursing through the walls, trying to bind them to this place. With a deep breath, Charlotte turns toward the stairwell, which now seems to stretch upward, leading toward the heart of the house. "We're getting out of here," she says firmly. "We have to." The spirits are closing in, their hands reaching through the water toward them. But Charlotte doesn't look back. She runs, not away from the spirits, but toward the heart of the house, where the only way to break the curse lies. The house is no longer just a building. It is a living, breathing nightmare, a twisted labyrinth that is closing in around them. The floodwaters are relentless, a merciless force that rises with every step, pulling them deeper into the mansion's dark heart. Every hallway, every room seems to stretch infinitely, warping into grotesque shapes, and the vengeful spirits are still there, their whispers filling the air with threats, promises of eternal suffering. Charlotte's heart is pounding in her chest as she leads the group through the darkened halls. She can feel the house's pulse beneath her feet, the rhythmic beating of something ancient and powerful. The walls are alive, whispering and groaning with secrets, as if trying to warn them to turn back. But Charlotte knows they cannot. They have come too far. "This is it," she says, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her insides. "We have to end this. We destroy the heart, and the curse will end." Her words hang in the air, heavy with the weight of everything they've experienced. The spirits, the water, the mansion. It's all been leading them here, to the very core of the nightmare. The heart of the house is close now, and they can almost feel its pull, its magnetic force trying to draw them toward it. They reach a set of grand doors, intricately carved with symbols Charlotte recognizes from the journal. These are not just decorations, they are bindings, ancient seals placed here to keep the heart from escaping. The floodwaters have almost completely filled the room, but the doors are still intact, their surface slick with moisture and covered in strange, pulsating light. Charlotte pauses, her hand resting on the cold wood. "This is it," she says, softly, but her voice cracks with the enormity of what they're about to face. They know what's behind these doors, the center of the curse, the heart of the mansion, the source of everything that has brought them here. With a deep breath, Charlotte pushes the doors open, the hinges creaking in protest. The room beyond is vast and dark, the only light coming from a single flickering candle at the center of the room. And there, in the middle, is a stone altar, its surface covered with intricate carvings and dark stains, remnants of blood and time. As Charlotte steps into the room, she feels the air change. It's thick, heavy, and the floodwaters around her feet seem to slow, as if the house is holding its breath. The spirits are no longer just whispering. They are silent, watching them from the shadows, their presence more oppressive than ever. But Charlotte doesn't look back. She knows they don't have much time. The heart, the source of the curse, lies before them, buried beneath the altar. Matt steps forward, his voice low. "What do we do?" Charlotte looks around the room, feeling the dark energy thickening around them. The floodwaters have stopped rising, but the stillness is almost more terrifying. The air is thick with magic, the remnants of rituals performed long ago, binding this house to something far darker than any of them could have ever imagined. In the center of the altar, beneath the candles, Charlotte spots it, the heart. It's not a literal organ, but something far worse, a dark, pulsating stone, the size of a human heart, glowing with an otherworldly light. It's surrounded by symbols, etched deep into the altar's surface. Charlotte steps forward, drawn to it, her pulse quickening. This is it. The source of the curse. The heart of the house. But as she approaches, the ground beneath her feet begins to shift. The walls groan and the air becomes foul, thick with the scent of decay and old blood. The whispers of the spirits grow louder, their voices screaming in her mind, filling her with dread. You can't destroy it. The voice is sharp, a low growl that reverberates through the room. Charlotte turns to see a shadow materializing in front of the altar. It's the man they saw earlier, his figure now fully formed, his hollow eyes glowing with malevolent energy. He steps forward, his form shifting between flesh and shadow, as though he is part of the house itself. You will never leave, the figure intones, his voice deep and filled with hate. This house is my domain. It feeds on your fear. It has bound me here, and it will bind you as well. The spirits, now more real than ever, begin to emerge from the walls, their faces twisted in agony and rage, their bodies gaunt and skeletal. The floodwaters rise again, not from the ground, but from the very walls themselves, as if the house is speaking through them, trying to pull the group into its embrace. Charlotte takes a step back, her mind racing. The house is alive. The heart is not just a source of power, it feeds off them, feeds off their fear. It's alive, and it doesn't want them to escape. You have to destroy it, Charlotte says, her voice shaking but filled with determination. She looks at the others. This is our only chance. Matt's voice cracks as he looks at the figure. How do we destroy it? Charlotte glances at the altar, her eyes narrowing as she examines the symbols around the heart. It's a ritual, she realizes. A dark ritual, one that must be reversed. She needs to break the seals, destroy the magic binding the house to its curse. But doing so won't be easy. It will require sacrifice, something to disrupt the flow of the curse, to sever the connection between the house and the spirits trapped within it. But the figure is already moving toward them, his hands reaching out, his fingers claw-like, as if trying to tear the air apart. The spirits are closing in. The house is tightening its grip. Charlotte knows that if she doesn't act soon, the curse will consume them all. There's no time left. We do it together, she says, her voice now filled with urgency. We have to destroy the heart now. With one final desperate breath, Charlotte raises her hands toward the altar, the symbols glowing in her vision, the pulse of the house thrumming beneath her feet. She speaks the words she found in the journal, the ancient counter-ritual that might undo the house's curse. The spirits scream in fury, but Charlotte and the others stand firm, focusing all their energy on the heart. And then, as the air thickens with a blinding light, the house shudders and the floodwaters begin to recede. The room shakes with an unnatural tremor, the walls groaning in protest as if the very house is fighting back against their defiance. The spirits, now fully manifest, swirl around the group like a storm of fury, their anguished cries growing louder and more desperate. The once quiet whispers have turned into deafening screams, filling the air with an overwhelming sense of dread. Charlotte's heart pounds in her chest as she stands before the altar, hands raised toward the pulsing heart in the center. The air around her feels thick, charged with an ancient energy that makes her skin crawl. The symbols on the altar glow with an eerie light, and the house seems to react to their every movement. It's as if it knows what they intend to do, and it will do anything to stop them. The figure, the man with the hollow eyes, steps forward once more, his presence towering over them. His shadowy form flickers between solid and spectral, his eyes glowing with malice. You cannot undo what has already been done, he growls, his voice like the grinding of stone. The house is mine, The souls are mine, and you will join them trapped forever in this place. The spirits surge forward, their outstretched hands reaching for the group, their hollow eyes filled with rage. They will not let them escape. The floodwaters, which had receded slightly, now rise again, roaring like a tidal wave, threatening to drown them all in the house's cursed embrace. "We have to destroy it," Charlotte cries, her voice shaking with desperation, but she doesn't falter. She knows the heart must be destroyed, but she also knows that doing so will require a sacrifice. The rituals in the journal spoke of it. The breaking of the curse is never without a cost. Matt looks at Charlotte, his face pale, his eyes filled with fear. "What do you mean? Sacrifice? What do we have to do?" Charlotte's gaze is drawn to the altar again. She can feel it, the weight of the house pressing down on her, its power growing stronger by the second. The heart is pulsating, its dark light growing brighter, almost blinding. She knows what she must do. There's no time left, Charlotte says, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "One of us has to stay behind. One of us has to remain here to break the ritual." The others stare at her, stunned. "What?" Claire breathes, her voice tight with disbelief. "No, there has to be another way." "There isn't," Charlotte replies, her eyes hardening. "The ritual requires a life, a soul to take the place of the curse. The heart won't be destroyed unless the sacrifice is made. We have to do this to free the others." The spirits grow more agitated, their movements erratic as they circle around them, trying to draw them into the flood. The room is closing in, the walls seeming to constrict with each passing second. The dark energy of the house presses in on them, urging them to give in to the curse. "No," Matt says, shaking his head frantically. "We can't let you do that. We'll find another way. I'll stay behind." "No," Charlotte says sharply. "I'm the one who brought us here. I'm the one who has to end this." Her voice is filled with determination, but there's a sadness behind it that she can't hide. This is the price they must pay to end the nightmare. To destroy the house, one of them must stay behind, become a part of the house's cursed heart forever. "I won't let you do it," Matt insists, stepping toward her, his hand reaching out. But Charlotte doesn't flinch. She's made her choice. The weight of the house, of the spirits, of everything they've endured, presses heavily on her. She understands now. The house has been waiting for this moment, waiting for someone to break the curse. But it won't let them go without taking something in return. "It has to be me," Charlotte whispers, her eyes locked on the heart. The sacrifice will break the ritual, end the curse, and free the trapped souls. But it will also mean her own destruction. She will be the one to take the house's place in its endless hunger. The house seems to tremble in response to her words, the altar pulsing more fiercely, as if it's aware that the moment has come. The spirits are closing in, their hands reaching through the floodwaters, but Charlotte's resolve remains unbroken. With one final deep breath, Charlotte steps forward, her heart heavy but determined. She speaks the words she found in the journal, the incantation that will sever the bond between the house and the spirits trapped within it. The ritual is clear now, and she knows that by destroying the heart, she will free the spirits, but also become part of the house's dark power. As she finishes the chant, the floodwaters surge around her, the spirits howling in fury as their forms begin to dissolve, pulled into the darkness of the heart. Charlotte feels a sharp pain in her chest, a burning sensation spreading through her body, but she doesn't stop. The house is screaming. The walls are shaking violently, and the heart pulses faster, like it's trying to resist, trying to pull her into the depths with it. Then, with a deafening crack, the heart breaks, its dark energy exploding outward in a blinding flash of light. The room is still. the silence so absolute that it feels like the world itself has ceased to exist. The floodwaters are gone now, the weight of the house's malevolent energy lifted, but the air still tingles with the remnants of its power, as if the very walls are remembering the curse that once bound them. The spirits are gone, their presence dissolved into the ether, freed at last from the mansion's grasp. But Charlotte is gone. The altar, once pulsing with dark energy, now lies, shattered, its pieces scattered across the floor. The heart that had bound the mansion to its curse has been destroyed, but at a price. Charlotte's absence is heavy, a void that hangs in the room, a silent reminder of the sacrifice she made. The group stands together, stunned, silent, the enormity of what just happened settling over them like a suffocating fog. They had won, but the victory feels hollow. Charlotte is gone. Matt is the first to speak, his voice breaking through the silence. She's gone. She really stayed behind. Tears well in his eyes, but he doesn't let them fall. Grief and guilt twist his insides. They had all agreed no one would be left behind. But Charlotte had made the ultimate choice, knowing the cost. She had destroyed the heart of the house, freeing the spirits, but it had taken her in return. "We couldn't stop her," Claire whispers, her voice filled with sorrow. She knew what she was doing. She knew what it would take. James stands, still staring at the broken altar, his eyes unfocused. "What happens now?" he murmurs, more to himself than anyone else. "The house is gone. It's over, right? It's done." But even as he speaks the words, the house seems to shift around them, the very walls creaking with a mournful sound. The air, though lighter than before, still feels wrong, as if something is lingering just beneath the surface. The floodwaters have receded, but there's a deep, lingering coldness in the air and a presence that refuses to leave. Suddenly, the temperature drops sharply, and the candlelight flickers ominously. The room is plunged into an eerie, unnatural darkness for just a moment, before the light returns, flickering and unstable. And then Charlotte appears again. Her figure materializes before them, not as a ghost, but as something otherworldly, a vision. Her face is serene, her eyes filled with a sadness that cuts through them all like a knife. She doesn't speak, but the air is filled with her presence, and they can feel the weight of her sacrifice in every breath. Her form flickers like a candle in the wind, her body translucent, shifting between the worlds of the living and the dead. She is not fully gone, not entirely freed, because she is bound to the house, bound to the heart that she destroyed. The ritual was completed, but it didn't free her. It transformed her. Charlotte. Matt's voice trembles as he steps forward, his heart aching with both love and loss. What happened to you?" The vision of Charlotte doesn't answer, but her eyes meet his. There is no anger, no fear in her gaze, just a quiet understanding, a sense of peace, but also a deep melancholy. Then the house groans, the walls shuddering again, and Charlotte's figure begins to fade. Her form flickers once more, becoming blurred, as if the separation between her and the house is still not fully complete. She looks at them one last time, and for a brief moment they hear her voice, not in their ears but deep in their minds. "I'll always be here. I'm part of it now. I couldn't leave without ending it. But there's always a piece of me here. I'm part of this house now, and I'll be watching over you. Don't be afraid. You're free now. The house is finally free." And with those final words, Charlotte disappears. Her form fades completely, leaving only the stillness of the room and the deep, overwhelming silence. The group stands in the darkness for a long moment, absorbing the weight of what has just transpired. Charlotte's sacrifice wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual. She didn't just destroy the house, she became a part of it, an eternal guardian, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable darkness, there's always the potential for light. Matt is the first to move, his face wet with tears but his voice strong. "She's still with us," he says quietly, wiping his eyes. "She's still here, and we can carry on. We're free because of her." The others nod, though the grief in their eyes is evident. They've lost their friend, their companion, but they've also gained something precious, the knowledge that they are free. The house is no longer a prison. The spirits are no longer trapped. Charlotte's sacrifice has set them all free. As they turn to leave, the mansion itself seems to breathe one last time, a deep, sorrowful exhale, as if the house is finally at peace. The floodwaters recede fully, and the doors, once locked and impossible to open, now swing wide on their own. For the first time, the mansion feels empty, but in a way that is peaceful, not haunted. The curse is broken, the spirits are freed, and the house is now silent, its hunger quenched. But as the group walks toward the exit, a soft, warm breeze sweeps through the doorway, carrying with it a faint, familiar scent, the scent of Charlotte's favorite flowers, a scent they will never forget. It's a small thing, but it's enough. Charlotte's presence will always be there, in the memories, in the wind, in the space between worlds. The mansion is quiet now, eerily so. The oppressive weight that had once filled the air has lifted, leaving behind an unsettling silence. The floodwaters have receded, leaving only remnants of the destruction they caused. But the group can feel the tension in the air. It's as if the house itself is holding its breath, waiting for something. The floodwaters may be gone, but the feeling of wrongness still lingers, a sense that something has been lost, something important. The group stands at the entrance, gazing out at the horizon. The once barren land outside now bathed in a strange, golden light, as though the world itself has been reborn. The mansion behind them looms dark and empty, its windows like hollow eyes staring out into the world. It is still standing, but it feels different, less like a prison, more like a memorial, a grave for all those who had been trapped within. "We did it," Claire whispers, her voice barely audible, as if saying the words aloud might make them less real. "We're free." But even as the words leave her mouth, she doesn't feel the relief she thought she would. There's something haunting about the mansion now, something that won't let go. Her eyes flick toward Matt, and they share an unspoken understanding. Charlotte is gone, but the truth of what they've done, and the cost of it all, still weighs heavily on them. The house may have been freed, but they are not the same. They have been changed in ways they can't yet fully comprehend. Matt shudders, pulling his jacket tighter around himself, as if he can shield himself from the coldness in the air. Charlotte. She gave everything. For us. James, who has been silent for most of the journey, finally speaks. His voice is thick with emotion. She didn't just free us from the house. She freed the spirits, and she gave up everything to do it. I can't believe she's really gone. They stand in a circle, the weight of their grief pressing down on them. The sun is setting, casting long shadows across the ruins of the mansion, but there's no warmth in the light. The world outside seems unnervingly still, as though it's waiting, holding its breath for something to come. As the minutes stretch on, the soft whispering begins again. At first, it's subtle, a distant sound, like a faint murmur, almost lost in the wind. But as they listen, it becomes clearer. The voices are familiar. Charlotte's voice, soft, comforting but distant, as if it's coming from the very walls of the house. "Charlotte?" Matt calls out, his voice shaking, but the sound is swallowed by the silence. The others turn to look at him, confusion and concern etched on their faces. They can hear it now too. The whisper is growing louder, not in words but in a tone, a reminder of the presence that is still with them. "It's her," Claire says, her voice trembling. She's still here." But even as she says the words, the house groans, not the groan of an old structure settling, but something more sinister. The walls creak and a chill sweeps through the air. The whispering grows louder, more insistent, and then, with an overwhelming rush, the air fills with a sound that is almost like a distant, echoing cry. A call for help. A sound that seems to reverberate from the very core of the mansion itself. The group turns in unison toward the entrance of the mansion, where the doors, which had been flung wide open, now slam shut with an unearthly force, the sound of the wood splitting in the silence. "What the hell?" James gasps, his voice shaky. "We're free! We're out! What's happening?" The water, which had receded, begins to rise again, slowly at first, as though it's being drawn back into the house by some unseen force. The floodwaters spread, creeping along the floor of the foyer, reaching out to the walls like searching fingers. But this time, it's different. The water seems darker, and it moves with purpose, almost as if it's alive. "Stay back," Matt warns, his voice filled with fear. "It's the house. It's trying to pull us back in." Charlotte's voice is still with them, now clearer but more insistent. It seems to echo from every corner of the mansion, like a living presence that refuses to leave. "You must leave." Now suddenly, the walls of the mansion seem to pulse, as if they're breathing. The house is not just a structure, it's a living thing, and it's alive with the spirit of Charlotte. Her presence is not fully gone, and though she has sacrificed herself to destroy the curse, her energy remains. She is still part of the house, but she is now a guardian, a lingering force that binds the house's spirit to the living world. But the house is changing, adapting. The water now flows upward, creeping along the walls as though it is consuming the mansion again, bringing it back to life, but not in the way it once was. "Charlotte," Matt breathes, reaching out toward the rising flood. "What do you want from us?" And then, from the depths of the mansion, a voice rises. No longer Charlotte's voice, but something other, a deep rumbling tone that seems to speak not with words, but with the very fabric of the house itself. "You are not free." The air grows cold again, and the group realizes the terrible truth. The house isn't just a prison of the past. It's a prison of the future. And though the curse may have been broken, something lingers. Charlotte may be free, but the house is still bound to the land, its hunger insatiable, its memory eternal. The group stands together in the darkness of the foyer, watching as the floodwaters continue to rise, but this time with a sense of understanding. The house has changed, but it will never truly be gone. Charlotte's sacrifice has broken the curse, but the mansion, like the spirits that once haunted it, will never fully let go. "We need to go," Claire says, voice soft but resolute. "Charlotte gave everything to set us free. We can't stay here anymore." Matt nods, his eyes filled with a mixture of grief and gratitude. "We're free, but it's time to leave." As they make their way to the door, the mansion groans one last time, a final sigh of the house that has known them all. The floodwaters begin to recede again, but now, in their hearts, they know the house will always remember them, and they will always carry a part of it with them, a part of Charlotte. The door opens, and the world outside feels brighter, more alive. The sun is setting, casting a golden light across the landscape, as if the curse has truly been lifted, and the land is beginning to heal. The air is still, and the landscape outside the mansion seems impossibly quiet after the storm. The golden light of the setting sun spreads across the land like a soft, fading memory, casting long shadows over the remnants of the house. As the group walks away, their feet crunching on the dry earth, the mansion stands behind them, looming tall and silent. They are free. The curse has been broken. The spirits have been released, and the house no longer holds them in its clutches. The floodwaters that once consumed everything are gone. Yet, as they look back, they feel a strange heaviness in their hearts, a weight that they can't quite shake. Is it really over? Claire's voice trembles as she glances back at the house, her face marked by exhaustion and grief. I mean, we did it, but it feels like the house is still watching us. Charlotte's final words echo in their minds. I'll always be here. Charlotte had sacrificed everything to destroy the heart of the house, to set the spirits free. But something about her presence still lingers in the air around them, as though her soul is forever intertwined with the house she gave her life to. Matt takes a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the mansion as it slowly fades into the distance. I don't know, he admits, his voice quiet. It feels like we're walking away from a nightmare, but part of that nightmare will always be with us. James looks at his feet, his expression dark. It wasn't just Charlotte. This house, it's a part of us now too. We'll carry it with us. It's impossible to walk away without a mark. They continue walking, the silence stretching between them. But there's a strange comfort in it now, an understanding that the weight of what they've been through is shared between them. They have survived the mansion, but its ghost will remain. Eventually, they reach the edge of the estate, the open fields stretching out before them. It's hard to believe that a place so filled with horror has now become just a house, a structure like any other. The world outside is so vast, so open, and yet they still feel like they've been forever changed by the mansion's dark legacy. You know, Claire begins, breaking the silence, her voice soft. I don't think the house is gone. Not really. Charlotte, she gave herself to it. She's a part of it now. But maybe that's what was needed to break the curse. Her presence in the house is what made the difference. Matt nods slowly. Yeah, maybe. But we were all a part of it in our own way. The house called to each of us. It didn't just want Charlotte. It wanted all of us. And it wanted our fear, our pain, our regrets. It fed on us. James turns back toward the mansion, his expression heavy. And we let it. We let the house feed off of us until we couldn't take it anymore, but Charlotte, she didn't give in. She gave everything to stop it. Not just stop it, Claire adds, her eyes glistening with the first tears she shed in what feels like forever. She freed it. She freed us. She freed herself. There's a long pause, and for a moment the wind stirs, carrying the scent of wildflowers and fresh rain. It's a subtle reminder that while the mansion may have been a prison, life continues. It moves forward, no matter what has happened. As they continue to walk, the mansion behind them now barely visible, a faint outline in the distance, they realize that they are no longer just survivors of a nightmare. They are changed. They have seen the darkness that dwells in the world and in themselves. They have faced a house that fed on fear, that haunted the living and the dead alike, and they have broken it. But the journey isn't over. The house may be gone, but it has left a mark on each of them, a shadow that will always remain. Don't know if we'll ever be truly free of it, Matt says, his voice quiet but certain. But we're alive. We have each other, and that's what matters. Maybe, Claire says softly, her eyes distant, but we'll always carry a part of Charlotte with us too. The sun is dipping below the horizon, and for the first time since entering the mansion, The group feels the weight of the world outside the house, the world that still exists, even after everything they've been through. But as they continue walking, something catches their eye. In the distance, where the mansion's ruins had once stood, something glows faintly in the twilight. A small flicker of light, like a candle burning in a window. They stop in their tracks, staring at the distant glow, their hearts racing. The light pulses gently, as if it's alive, a heartbeat from the ruins of the mansion, an echo of Charlotte's sacrifice. "It's not over," James murmurs, his voice filled with awe and fear. "The house, it's still there. She's still with us." They turn toward the light, but no one moves. The glow remains steady in the distance, a final reminder that the mansion, though destroyed, will never truly leave them. The group stands in the quiet field outside the mansion, gazing back at the glowing light that flickers faintly in the distance. The evening air is cool, the scent of earth and wet grass mixing with the faint remnants of rain. The world beyond. The mansion seems vast, endless, and untouched. Yet it feels impossible to move forward without acknowledging the weight of what they've experienced. Do you think she's really gone?" Claire's voice is soft, almost fearful. "That part of her is still here? Or is she trapped with the house?" The question hangs in the air, unanswered, as they all turn back toward the distant mansion, where the faint glow pulses like a heartbeat in the gathering twilight. The light is steady, like an unseen beacon, but its source is unclear. The mansion itself is far too quiet to offer any answers, and yet the presence of something otherworldly still seems to cling to the land around them. Matt steps forward, his face grim but filled with resolve. "She's not trapped, Claire. She freed us. She freed the house. The house might still echo her presence, but she's not stuck there. She's part of something bigger now. She gave herself up to break the curse, and I think, in a way, she became the light that destroyed it." James, who's been silently watching the horizon, his expression distant, finally speaks. "I don't know if I believe that. The house is gone, sure. But Charlotte, I think she's still here, in some way, watching over us." He pauses, and his eyes meet theirs, filled with uncertainty and something deeper. "Maybe it's better. That way, the others stand silently, contemplating the truth in his words. They know that Charlotte's sacrifice was not simply to free the spirits or break the curse. It was a transformation, something that can never be undone. They can feel her presence in the air, like a faint whisper that lingers in the corners of their minds, a reminder of what she gave. Suddenly, the flickering light in the distance seems to grow brighter, though the mansion is far too quiet. It's as if the land itself is responding to them, to their questions, their doubts. "I think we're ready to go," Claire says, her voice steady but tired. "We can't keep looking back. We've been through enough, and we need to live. Again, we need to move on." The others nod in agreement, though none of them can completely shake the feeling that something important is being left behind, something unseen. They begin walking away from the mansion, leaving the ruins behind, but the light in the distance still pulls at them. It's as though the house itself is calling, though they know it no longer has the power to hold them. They walk for what feels like hours, the golden light fading into the dusk as they move farther from the mansion. The land ahead is unfamiliar but wide open, freedom in its purest form. And yet every step they take feels heavy, as if they are leaving behind something more than just the house. They are leaving behind a chapter of their lives, a chapter that has forever changed them. As they walk, the first stars begin to appear, dotting the sky in patterns they haven't seen before. For a moment, it feels like everything is new, like they're standing at the edge of something beyond, something they can't fully comprehend. But just as the stars begin to shine brighter, a cold gust of wind sweeps through the open field, carrying with it a familiar scent, the same fragrance of Charlotte's favorite flowers. The group stops dead in their tracks, and for a long moment, they stand there, breathing in the wind, feeling Charlotte's presence once more. It's fleeting, but it's enough to fill them with both peace and sadness. Charlotte's sacrifice wasn't just the end of the house. It was the end of a part of them, a chapter that will never be closed. As the wind dies down, they take a deep breath and continue walking, knowing that their journey is far from over. They've been through the worst of it, but the world outside still holds unknown challenges, new beginnings, and new lives to live. "We're not alone," Matt says, quietly, more to himself than to the others. "Charlotte's always with us, in our hearts." And as they walk toward the horizon, each of them feels a sense of hope and freedom that they haven't felt in a long time. The house may have consumed so much of their lives, but the world beyond, it is full of endless possibility. And though the house will always be a part of them, etched in their memories, they will move forward. The days that follow are a blur, the world outside the mansion's crumbling walls, moving on as if nothing has changed, as though the horrors they endured never happened. The house may have been destroyed, the curse broken, and the spirits freed. But the group is left with the stark reality that their lives will never be the same. They arrive in a small town, a place so ordinary, so far removed from the nightmare they've just escaped, that it feels almost like a dream. The simple beauty of it, a patchwork of fields, small shops and quiet streets, seems so out of place compared to the chaos and terror of the mansion. They stand together at the edge of a diner parking lot, their eyes scanning the world around, them with a mixture of relief and disbelief. Relief because they are free. Disbelief because the scars of what they've seen, of what they've done, are too fresh to ignore. "Do you ever feel like..." Claire's voice cracks slightly, and she stops herself. "Like we've just walked out of one life and into another, but neither of them are real?" Matt looks at her, his face weary but filled with understanding. "I feel like I'm walking in a dream. Everything here is so quiet, so normal. It doesn't feel real." James, who has been unusually quiet, finally speaks up, his voice tinged with uncertainty. I thought we'd be different. That after everything, after Charlotte's sacrifice, we'd feel something different about this world. But we still feel like we're stuck, like we're carrying that house with us. It's hard to let go. Charlotte's presence, though gone, feels close. They carry her with them, her sacrifice and her final words ringing in their minds. "I'll always be here." The group looks at the small town before them, trying to imagine how they can ever return to anything that resembles a normal life. The man who had once been an anchor for their shared terror, the house, has fallen silent. But that silence, though it's a relief, feels unnervingly loud. "Maybe it's not about going back," Matt says quietly. "Maybe we're not meant to. Maybe it's about starting over, living now instead of surviving." The others nod, though it's clear that the weight of their past still clings to them. They are not just escaping a house. They are escaping themselves, the fear and the trauma that has followed them all the way from the mansion. The cost of their victory is immense, and it's something they must carry with them forever. The days slip by in a blur of new experiences, simple, ordinary things that seem far removed from the unimaginable horrors they faced together. They go for walks, eat in diners, and attempt to reintegrate into the world as if nothing has happened. But nothing feels real. At night, when they are alone with their thoughts, Charlotte's presence haunts them, a quiet echo of the sacrifice she made. She is gone, but the part of her that remains is always with them. It's in the small moments, when the wind stirs through the trees, carrying with it the faintest scent of wildflowers, that they feel her the most. In the quiet spaces between their words, in the brief pauses during their laughter, they all sense her, a flicker of light they can't quite catch, but that will never fade. One evening, as they sit in a quiet park watching the sunset, the conversation shifts. "Do you think we'll ever forget?" James asks, his voice low, almost to himself. "Forget the house? Forget what we did?" "I don't think we're meant to forget," Matt replies, looking out toward the horizon. "We don't get to move on without remembering. But maybe that's okay. Maybe that's the price of freedom." There's a long silence. The sun sinks lower, casting the park in shades of orange and pink, the world around them peaceful and still. The stillness feels almost unnatural, but it's welcome. They have survived, and though the scars of their past will never completely fade, they know that they are free. As the night falls and the stars begin to pierce the darkening sky, they feel something shifting within them. The house is behind them. Charlotte's sacrifice has broken the curse, but her light still shines, guiding them forward. They rise from the park bench, standing together in the quiet night, each of them silently acknowledging the truth. They have changed. They have lived through something unimaginably dark, and now they must live through something just as difficult: healing. "We're free," Claire says softly, looking at the others. "And we'll find a way forward, together." For the first time since their journey began, the weight they carry feels less oppressive. It is still there, the trauma, the grief, and the loss, but they no longer have to bear it alone. They have each other, and the world ahead, no matter how uncertain, is still open to them. They walk together into the night, their steps in sync, as the stars above them shine bright. And in the distance, Charlotte's light flickers one last time, like a silent guardian, watching over them as they take their first steps into the world beyond the mansion, into the unknown. The months that pass after leaving the mansion are filled with uncertainty, but also with an inexplicable sense of freedom. The world outside the house feels almost surreal, like a dream they can't fully touch. Life moves forward in ways that seem far removed from the darkness they once endured. Matt, Claire, and James all find ways to navigate their new lives, though the weight of their pasts is never far behind. They each take different paths, trying to heal and understand what it means to carry the legacy of Charlotte's sacrifice, but none of them can escape the shadow of the house. Claire, seeking some kind of normalcy, moves to a small town several hours away, starting fresh in a place where the memories of the mansion can begin to fade, where she can focus on simple things, friends, work, and trying to forget the endless darkness they faced. But even in her new life, the memories of Charlotte linger, and every corner of her new life seems haunted by the echoes of the past. James, struggling with the same weight, takes a job at a bookstore, an ordinary life, far removed from the horrors they experienced, yet a job that offers him solace in the quiet pages of books. But he can never quite get rid of the feeling that he's being watched, that Charlotte's spirit is still there, guiding him forward. He struggles to keep his memories buried, but the house has a way of resurfacing in the quietest moments, and he finds himself asking, what comes after trauma? Matt, meanwhile, takes a different route, throwing himself into advocacy work, helping others deal with the kind of trauma that he knows all too well. He feels a compelling need to make sure no one else faces the horrors of the mansion, but even as he fights for others, he battles a deep, persistent guilt. Could he have stopped Charlotte from sacrificing herself? Could they have escaped without her giving everything? The questions haunt him, and sometimes he wonders if they'll ever truly find peace. Yet, despite the separate paths they take, one thing remains constant: their shared connection, the unspoken understanding that they've been through something extraordinary together, something that no one else could ever truly comprehend. One evening, as the three of them meet again in a quiet cafe in the heart of the small town, they sit across from each other, the weight of Charlotte's memory hanging between them. "Don't know if I'm supposed to be happy now," Claire says quietly, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "There are days when I feel like I'm living someone else's life, like I've been given a second chance, but I don't know what to do with it." James nods, his gaze distant. "I know what you mean. The world around us is almost too normal, you know, like it's not real. It's like we're all in a dream, and the mansion is this dark thing that lingers in the background. I don't know how to get rid of it, how to shake it off." Matt is the last to speak, his voice low but full of determination. "Maybe we're not supposed to shake it off. We can't forget what we've been through or what Charlotte did for us. But maybe that's the point. We don't have to forget. It's part of us now. We carry it with us, and we use it to move forward." They sit in silence for a long time, each of them coming to grips with the new reality they must face. The house, its curse, and Charlotte's sacrifice are not things they can easily leave behind. They will never be the same, and no matter where they go, no matter how far they travel, the memory of the mansion will always be with them, woven into their lives like a thread that can never be undone. As the night deepens and the cafe starts to empty out, Claire looks at Matt and James. "Do you ever think about going back to the mansion to see what it's like now?" The question hangs in the air, and for a moment, none of them speaks. But deep down, they all know the answer. The house is gone, but its mark is permanent. Charlotte's sacrifice has freed them from the curse, but it has also bound them to the mansion forever, just as it had bound her. The light that once flickered in the ruins of the mansion will forever shine in their hearts, a reminder of the price that was paid to end the nightmare. "We'll never go back," Matt says finally, his voice quiet but resolute. "There's nothing left for us there. It's over. It's time for us to write our own future." And with that, they all make the unspoken decision. The past, no matter how haunting, is behind them. It is Charlotte's legacy, and it is now their turn to live. The three of them walk out of the cafe together, stepping into the cool night air. The stars above twinkle brightly, and for the first time since they escaped the mansion, they feel as though the future is theirs to write. The road ahead is uncertain, filled with the weight of memories and the lessons they've learned. But for the first time, they walk forward with a sense of hope, a glimmer of something new. The world is waiting for them, and they are ready to face it. The town is quiet, almost too quiet. It's a place where people know one another by name, where the sounds of children playing in the streets and neighbors chatting over fences fill the air. It's a far cry from the heavy, oppressive silence of the mansion, from the chaos of haunted hallways and rooms soaked in fear. And yet, the quiet of this small town feels just as deafening, because here, more than anywhere, the memories of the mansion creep into every corner, every conversation, every nightfall. Charlotte's sacrifice has been honored in small ways, moments of silence between friends, shared looks that say everything without words, memories quietly acknowledged, but never fully voiced. It's not that the group has forgotten her. They never will. But life, after all the horrors they faced, moves forward, and they find themselves slowly settling into a new rhythm, a new existence in a world where they are no longer bound by the house, but still haunted by the shadows of it. The days pass, each one blurring into the next. The weight they carry with them is now an invisible thing, something that they can no longer feel pressing down with every step, but which continues to exist, always just beneath the surface. Claire spends her mornings in the small flower shop she now works at, taking solace in the soft petals of roses, lavender, and wildflowers. She finds comfort in the simplicity of arranging bouquets, the repetitive motion calming her restless thoughts. She's created a quiet life for herself, one that exists far away from the mansion and its horrors. But when the night falls and the wind rustles the leaves outside her window, she feels Charlotte's presence, a soft whisper, the faintest flicker of light in the dark. It's comforting, but also bittersweet, as she knows deep down that Charlotte, in some form, is still with them. She wakes each morning with a renewed sense of purpose, deciding to move forward while carrying the strength that Charlotte gave her. But every night when she closes her eyes, there's still a quiet haunting. Not of the house, but of what it took to free them all. She has learned to live with it, but it doesn't make it easier. James has found a small apartment, something ordinary and far from the unsettling nature of the mansion. He keeps his space simple, organizing his bookshelves and cluttered desk with meticulous care. But even in the safety of his routine, the shadows linger. Late at night, he often finds himself staring into the stillness, unsure if it's the house or his own mind he's running from. His dreams are fractured, visions of Charlotte's light, flickers of memories from their time in the mansion that mix with the strange and impossible. He knows deep down that he can never erase those images from his mind, but he also knows that he must live. James visits Claire and Matt often, the three of them sitting together, each of them acknowledging the ghosts they carry in silence. They have been marked by the mansion, but they are learning how to live with the scars. Each visit, each conversation, is a quiet step forward as they rebuild their world outside the nightmare. Matt has thrown himself into his work, using the guilt of his survival to help others who have faced their own traumas. He's found a strange peace in being able to guide others through their darkest times. But there's a part of him that can never move on completely. The guilt of Charlotte's sacrifice haunts him, as does the sense that he was supposed to protect her, to keep her from having to make that choice. Her absence is something he cannot fully confront, but he feels her presence in every decision he makes, in every step toward helping others. He visits the mansion's ruins once, standing at the threshold where the house once stood. The sight of it, the feeling of the land beneath his feet, brings a strange comfort and sorrow. The mansion is now just a shadow, a memory on the horizon, but it will never fully leave him. He knows that Charlotte is part of it now, but he also knows that she's watching over them, guiding them even in her absence. The group still keeps in contact regularly. They visit each other, sometimes with laughter and other times in silence. But their conversations are always filled with the quiet weight of understanding. They are healing, but there are still so many pieces of their lives that have yet to be put back together. As the months slip by, there's a change in the air, an almost imperceptible shift. The world feels brighter, less oppressive. The seasons pass, and with them, the group learns to reclaim their lives. But as the seasons change, so do their perceptions. The mansion, though destroyed, has left a mark on the landscape, not just in their hearts, but in the world itself. The land around the ruins has started to change too. Where once there was only darkness and decay, life begins to return. Wildflowers bloom, grass grows tall where it was once barren, and birds return to sing in the trees that had been silent for so long. But beneath it all, there is a sense of peace, something that wasn't there before. The house is no more, but Charlotte's light has left a mark on the world, guiding them forward, showing them that even in the darkest of times, there is hope. One evening, while sitting together on a bench in the town's park, the group looks up at the stars. The night sky is clear, the stars shining brightly above them, a reflection of the new life they've started to carve for themselves. "Do you think she's still out there?" Claire asks softly, her voice almost a whisper. "I think she always will be," Matt replies, his voice steady. "But she's not in the house anymore. She's in us. We carry her light." James looks up at the sky, his expression thoughtful. "She gave us the strength to keep going. And even though the house is gone, I think it's because of her that we're here. We're alive because she made sure we had a future." The group is silent for a moment, and then they all look out at the horizon. The town, the world, it all feels different now. Not perfect, not without its struggles, but there's a future that they will shape and live. As the night stretches on, the soft murmur of the world around them, crickets, the rustle of leaves, feels like the beginning of something new. They don't know what the future holds, but they know that Charlotte's light, her sacrifice, has created a path for them to follow. The days have turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. The quiet lives the group has started to rebuild in the aftermath of the mansion feel strangely foreign. A world that's almost too normal for the people they've become. They wake, each day with a sense of routine, a kind of comfort that feels both fragile and unearned. But as the seasons shift once more, the reality of their experience, the horrors they faced in the mansion, sneaks back into their lives in ways they hadn't expected. It's one evening in late autumn, when the leaves have turned amber and gold, that the quiet of their lives starts to unravel once again. Matt is walking home from work, the crisp air biting at his skin when he feels it, a subtle shift in the wind, an almost tangible pull in his chest. He stops, looking around as though expecting to see something or someone. The world around him feels oddly familiar, yet foreign at the same time, as if he's being watched, guided. It's not the first time he's felt this sensation. Since leaving the mansion, there have been glimpses, quiet moments where something in the air feels wrong, like the house's curse is still lingering in the corners of their world. But he's always shaken it off, telling himself that the trauma of the mansion is just a memory, a bad chapter that should have closed. But as he stands there, the wind whistling softly through the trees, it hits him again, that feeling. The same presence that used to haunt the mansion is now haunting him here, in this quiet town. Matt doesn't know what to make of it. He takes a deep breath and moves forward, hoping that it's just his mind playing tricks on him. But when he gets home, something is different. His apartment feels too still, almost like it's holding its breath. The shadows are a little deeper, and the temperature seems just a little colder than usual. The next day, James experiences something similar. He's walking through a bookstore, the smell of old paper and ink filling the air, when his body suddenly feels heavy. His heart races inexplicably, and his palms sweat. He looks around, trying to make sense of the discomfort building in his chest. The store, once a place of peace and routine for him, now feels strangely oppressive. He steps outside, the sunlight hitting his face, but it doesn't feel as warm as it once did. It's as if the world around him is distant, unreachable. He starts walking, but the feeling won't leave. Charlotte's light, which once felt so comforting, now feels like something he can't quite grasp, something that's slipping further away. He wonders, just for a moment, if maybe she never fully left. Could the house's curse still linger? Claire feels it too one evening as she arranges flowers in the shop. The scent of lavender fills the air, but it's too familiar, like something she's smelled before, a smell that reminds her of the house. She looks around, the peacefulness of the shop suddenly feeling overwhelming. Her hands tremble slightly as she arranges the petals, and she can't help but feel like she's being watched. For the first time since leaving the mansion, she can't escape the feeling that there's something unseen with them, something that they never truly left behind. She turns to a customer and forces a smile, trying to push the unease aside, but the feeling persists. That night, when she returns home, the whispers begin again, soft and distant but unmistakable. Charlotte's voice. She knows it's impossible, but it's there, that quiet, almost imperceptible call. A call to remember, to not forget. The bond they share is deeper than just memories. Charlotte is still with them. As the days continue, the unsettling sensations grow stronger. The group begins to meet again, trying to make sense of what they're experiencing. They share stories of strange feelings, fleeting glimpses of Charlotte's light, and inexplicable sensations that seem to draw them back to the mansion. "I don't know what's happening," James says, his voice tight with frustration. "I thought we were done with all of this. I thought we could leave the house behind. But this isn't normal. I keep seeing shadows where there shouldn't be any. I keep hearing whispers that don't make sense." "We all feel it," Matt adds, his face pale. "It's like the house is still alive. But how? How could it still be here?" Claire is the first to speak, her voice softer than usual. "Charlotte gave everything to destroy it. But she didn't just destroy the house, she gave a piece of herself to it. That piece, that light, it's still there, in the mansion, in us." The words hang in the air, heavy and full of meaning. The group falls silent, each of them struggling to understand what it means. Charlotte's light wasn't just a physical thing. It wasn't just the destruction of the heart. It was something deeper, something tied to the very essence of who they had become and the sacrifice she made. Charlotte had become part of the house, but now she is also part of them, and her presence can never fully be removed, not from the mansion and not from their hearts. The group decides to return to the mansion to face what remains. They have to know, once and for all, if it's truly over, if Charlotte's sacrifice really did free them, or if something more sinister is still at play. As they stand before the mansion's ruins, the once powerful structure now just a series of stone and wood, they feel it, the presence. It's quiet, almost reverent, but unmistakable. Charlotte's light, her love, her strength, still lingers in the ruins. They walk into the wreckage, carefully navigating the broken walls and debris. There, in the heart of the ruins, is a spot of fresh wildflowers, vibrant and alive amidst the decay. It's Charlotte's gift to them, proof that even in the deepest darkness, there's life. "We can't go back to who we were," Matt says softly, kneeling beside the flowers. "But we can keep moving forward. Charlotte showed us that we have to keep going. We have to keep living." The others nod, their hearts heavy but full of a quiet strength. The house may be gone, but Charlotte's sacrifice has forever changed them. They will never escape it, but they don't need to. Her light will always guide them in the mansion's ruins, in the wildflowers that bloom, and in the lives they are rebuilding. The group stands at the heart of the mansion's ruins, the weight of everything that has happened settling on them like a blanket, heavy yet comforting. The house may be gone, its curse broken, but the memories remain, the lessons etched deep into their souls. They had thought the end of the house would be a clean break, a moment of release, but they now know that the mansion's influence is not something that can ever truly be erased. As the sun rises over the horizon, casting its golden light across the wildflowers and scattered ruins, the first real sense of peace settles over the group. It's as though the land itself has healed, brought back to life by Charlotte's sacrifice and by their collective strength. The house is no longer a place of fear. It is now just a memory, something they've survived, something they will carry forever, but it no longer has power over them. The light that once filled the mansion, the energy of Charlotte's spirit, no longer lingers in the same way. It is as if she has passed through the house, through the pain, and now her presence is no longer a haunting. Instead, it is a gentle guiding force, like a light in the distance, always there but no longer trying to pull them back into the darkness. They don't speak for a long time. There's nothing left to say, just the quiet understanding that they are free. They've fought, they've bled, and they've lost something they can never get back. But in the end, they've gained something just as precious: each other. Matt is the first to stand and move, his eyes now clear, no longer clouded by guilt or fear. The house has taken its toll on him, but in the stillness of the ruins, he can finally breathe deeply without the weight of Charlotte's sacrifice suffocating him. "I think it's time to move on," he says quietly, but his voice carries a new sense of strength. "We can't keep looking back. Charlotte freed us, but now it's our turn to live for ourselves." James nods in agreement, looking at the wild flowers in the distance, the sight filling him with a quiet hope that he hasn't felt in a long time. We've been given a chance. Charlotte's light is in us. It always will be. We carry it wherever we go, but we need to live now. We need to find a way to heal. Claire looks down at the flowers as well, her heart swelling with gratitude and sorrow in equal measure. We'll always remember. We'll never forget what she did for us. But we can't stay here forever. We need to build something new. They all turn to face the horizon, the world beyond the mansion's ruins, wide and open, waiting for them. The days ahead are uncertain, but for the first time, they no longer feel weighed down by the house's legacy. They are free, and though they'll carry their memories with them, they know they are the ones who will shape the future. The journey back to the small town is quiet, almost reflective. They don't speak much during the trip, each of them lost in their own thoughts, but there is a sense of solidarity between them, unspoken but strong. As they arrive in the town, the world continues to turn, as it always has. People go about their business, unaware of the terror that once haunted the land nearby. The world feels lighter now, though the shadow of the mansion will always be a part of them. The house is gone, but it has left them changed. That evening, after they've settled into the quiet of their new lives, they sit together, Matt, Claire, and James, in a small cafe, the night falling around them. The conversation is easy now, filled with laughter, small talk, and the promise of tomorrow. For the first time since the mansion, they feel the absence of the curse, not just in the physical sense, but in their hearts. The weight is gone, and, though the mansion's presence still lingers in their memories, in the quiet spaces of their hearts, they know that it no longer controls them. "Do you think she would be proud of us?" Claire asks, her voice soft as she looks at her friends. "I think she already is," Matt says, his voice firm. "She knew what we could do. She gave everything for us to be free. Now it's our turn to make sure that we live. For her, for us." James smiles, his eyes filled with something soft and sad. "We'll carry her light, always." The cafe windows fog slightly as the night grows deeper, but the three of them don't notice. They're finally able to see each other, truly see each other, without the shadow of the mansion hanging over them. There's no longer an urgency, no longer a feeling that they are escaping or running. They are living. And as the night stretches on, as the stars flicker above them, they know that they've made it. They've survived the house, but more than that, they've grown from it. They are no longer the people they were when they entered the mansion. They are stronger, more whole, and they understand that the future is unwritten. It's theirs to shape. The light from Charlotte's sacrifice still flickers in their hearts, a soft glow guiding them into the world ahead, and they walk forward. You're deep into the story now, and the horrors are only escalating. If you're still with us, don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell us where you're listening from in the comments. Who else is staying up late to face this nightmare? Settle in. The terror continues. Story 2. The trail had always seemed longer than they remembered, winding its way through the dense forest and up into the rugged embrace of the Absaroka Mountains. Montana's wild beauty sprawled beneath a sky so open it felt like the edge of the world. But today, something about the air was different. Thick clouds hung heavily overhead, their darkness not quite right. It wasn't just the weather that unsettled Sarah, but the quiet. There had been no birds calling, no rustling of animals in the underbrush. The forest felt unnaturally still. Sarah glanced at Jake as they trudged onward, the rhythm of their boots crunching against the frozen earth the only sound. He looked unbothered, eyes fixed ahead, his beanie pulled low over his brow. She envied his calm, but it was hard to shake the feeling that they were being watched, the kind of feeling that makes your skin prickle and your pulse quicken for no reason you can place. "You sure about this hike?" she asked, her voice strained as she tried to brush off the growing anxiety tightening in her chest. Jake gave a lazy grin, not looking back. "Of course, we've hiked worse conditions than this. A little snow won't stop us." He was right in a way. They had hiked these trails many times before, always seeking the quiet escape that the mountains offered. But this was different. The storm was rolling in faster than expected, and the air was growing colder, heavy with the anticipation of something unpleasant. Sarah pulled her jacket tighter around herself and quickened her pace, trying to ignore the gnawing sensation that the mountain had started to close in around them. As they crested the ridge, the world below them disappeared into a veil of white. Snowflakes, small at first, began to fall in a steady, thickening curtain. The wind picked up, making the world feel smaller, its reach infinite. It was a sudden change, the temperature dropping, the visibility fading, the light dimming as the snow thickened with a cruel speed. "This is getting bad fast," Sarah said, her voice rising with the wind. Jake stopped in his tracks, looking over the sheer drop to the valley below. He checked his watch, his brows furrowing as the snow intensified. The air was filled with the sound of the wind picking up, howling and wailing as if trying to tear them from the ridge. "Let's find shelter. There's a cliff just ahead, a little ways off." They stumbled forward, snow swirling around their faces, cutting through their clothes like knives. It wasn't just the cold. The storm seemed alive, as though it could reach into their very thoughts. Their breath came in shallow gasps, fogging up the air around them as they trudged toward the overhang. The jagged rocks seemed to rise out of the snow like sentinels, dark and foreboding against the white backdrop of the storm. They reached the overhang just as the storm hit in full force. The snow was so thick now that they could barely see their own hands in front of their faces. Sarah felt a rush of relief when they took shelter under the overhanging cliff. The rock smelled of damp earth and moss. The cold seeped in quickly, but it was better than being exposed to the fury outside. Jake dropped his pack and leaned against the wall, brushing the snow from his jacket. He cast a glance at Sarah, his lips pulled into a tight smile. "This will blow over soon." Sarah wasn't so sure. She pulled her legs in close to her chest, trying to stave off the bone-deep chill that had settled in her joints. The storm raged around them, the wind a deafening roar. It felt as though the entire world had closed in, the snow and wind pressing against the rock like a living thing. There was something unnatural about the storm, something malevolent in its rush and fury, as if it was pushing them deeper into the heart of the mountain. Jake sat down beside her, his breathing steady, but there was a flicker of discomfort in his eyes. "You know, I'm not sure this is just a regular storm," he said, the hint of a nervous laugh in his voice. "Something about it feels off." Sarah nodded, tightening her grip on her jacket. "I was just thinking the same thing." They sat in silence, the storm outside drowning out everything but the howl of the wind. The world beyond the cliff was gone, just a blank canvas of white. It was as though time had stopped. But then, from somewhere beyond the storm's roar, a strange sound reached their ears. A voice, not loud, but distinct enough to break the silence that had settled between them. "Did you hear that?" Sarah's voice trembled as she leaned closer to Jake, her eyes scanning the space beyond their shelter. Jake's gaze darted to the horizon. "It's just the wind. Maybe an animal, or—" "No," Sarah interrupted, her voice sharp now. "That was a voice. A person's voice." Jake frowned, then stood up, his face set in a determined line. He took a few steps toward the edge of the cliff, his eyes straining to see through the whiteout. "I'm sure it was just the wind. But we're not alone out here," Jake said, glancing back over his shoulder. "There's probably some other hikers taking shelter nearby." He took another step, looking down at the empty, snow-covered valley below. The wind tugged at his jacket, the air icy and biting, but there was no sound, no movement, just the vast emptiness. "That was no animal," Sarah whispered, a chill creeping down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. She wasn't sure why, but the thought of a stranger out here, in this storm, unsettled her deeply. She could feel her heart racing now, a prickle of unease spreading through her chest. Jake turned back toward her, about to speak, when his words were cut off by a sudden sharp crack in the air. A voice, louder this time. "Is anyone out there?" Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Jake blinked, then laughed nervously. "It's just the storm, Sarah. The echo off the rocks or something." But Sarah didn't hear him. The voice had come from somewhere behind them, deeper in the mountains, unmistakably clear despite the howling wind. She was sure of it now. It wasn't the wind. Something else was out there, and it was calling. The silence that followed the strange voice seemed to stretch on forever. For a moment, Sarah wondered if she had imagined it, if it was just her mind playing tricks in the cold, her senses dulled by the relentless blizzard. But the chill crawling up her spine, the heavy weight of her thoughts, told her otherwise. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Jake had heard it too. She could see it in the way he stood, frozen, his body tensed and rigid, his hand still resting on the edge of the rocky outcrop as he stared into the storm, his breath coming faster now. "Jake," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible against the howling wind. She reached out and touched his shoulder, and he flinched, as though pulled out of a trance. He turned to her, his eyes wide, the nervous grin that usually played across his face now absent. "You heard that too, didn't you?" She nodded, her throat tightening. "It wasn't the wind, Jake. That wasn't just an echo." Jake swallowed hard. "What do you think it was?" She didn't know what to say. The idea that someone else could be out there in the storm, someone or something, felt both impossible and terrifying. The storm was too strong for anyone to be out there, not this far from the nearest trail. But the voice, clear and almost purposeful, had shattered the illusion of safety they'd been clinging to. The isolation of the mountains, once a comfort, now felt suffocating. Another gust of wind tore through the shelter, rattling the overhang. Snow began to swirl around them in vicious whirls, biting their exposed skin. Sarah wrapped her arms around her body, her mind racing. Was someone playing a cruel prank? Had another group of hikers wandered too far off course? Or was it something else entirely? The voice came again, unmistakable this time, rising above the wind with an eerie clarity. "I see you." The words echoed across the space, not just in the air but in her mind, ringing with a strange weight, heavy and dark. It wasn't an echo of their words, it was an answer, a response. But there was something unsettlingly deliberate about it, almost as if it had been waiting for them, waiting for this moment. The air around them seemed to thicken with tension, pressing in on Sarah's chest. She couldn't breathe right. The cold that had been biting before now felt like it was seeping into her bones, settling deep within her. The storm outside no longer seemed like just a natural occurrence. It had become something else. Alive. A presence. Jake turned to her with wide eyes, his voice barely above a whisper. Did it just say that?" Sarah nodded, her heart pounding in her ears, drowning out the howling wind. "It's not the storm. It's something else." For a long, dreadful moment, neither of them spoke. The world outside their shelter had become a maddening blur of white, the wind howling with an intensity that seemed impossible, rattling the very rocks they were huddled beneath. The storm was growing worse by the minute. The temperature had dropped even further, and Sarah could feel her fingers and toes going numb. "Maybe we should head back," Jake said, his voice strained. "Get out of here before it gets worse." Sarah could only nod. She wasn't sure she believed in ghosts or spirits or anything supernatural, but there was no denying what they were hearing. This storm wasn't just a storm. It was something else. Something dark, ancient even. But as they stood, preparing to gather their things and leave, another voice echoed, clearer this time, carrying a sense of familiarity. "I see you." Sarah's blood ran cold. That was not the voice from before. This was different. A man's voice, but low, gravelly, older, with a deliberate resonance that sent chills crawling up her spine. Jake's hand shot out, gripping her arm tightly. His face was pale, his eyes wide in shock. "What the hell is that?" It didn't make sense. The storm was fierce, the wind a constant roar, but this voice, this deep, gravelly voice, sounded close. Too close. It didn't come from the wind. It didn't come from any direction that made sense. And then, without warning, the ground trembled beneath them. A subtle vibration that seemed to hum through the rock. Sarah's eyes snapped to the ground, and she realized in horror that the vibration was not just the earth shaking. It was something else, something moving beneath their feet. Her breath caught in her throat. Was it an animal? Some large creature beneath the rock, shifting in its lair? But no sound of claws or fur moved against the stone. No scraping, no rustling, only that voice. A voice that had no origin. "I see you," it repeated, and this time it was followed by a low, almost guttural laugh, as if the very wind itself was mocking them. Sarah staggered back, her heart thundering in her chest. She could feel her breath coming faster now, panic creeping up her spine like a cold hand. What is that?" Jake whispered, his voice trembling. She couldn't answer. She had no idea. The ground beneath them rumbled again, more violently. This time, and suddenly, the shadows of the overhang seemed to twist and shift. A fleeting movement in the corner of her eye, a flash of something dark, impossibly black against the snow. Sarah spun toward it, but there was nothing there. "Jake, she started, but her words faltered in the dense, eerie silence that followed. It felt as though the storm had momentarily paused, holding its breath. The voice came again, this time from above, rumbling from the rocks themselves. "I see you, both of you." The words were clear, and they were no longer an echo. They were coming from something, someone, just beyond their sight. Jake's grip on her arm tightened, his eyes darting nervously around. He looked as though he might bolt, his nerves on edge. "This isn't normal, Sarah. We need to get out of here, now." But before either of them could take a step, the voice whispered again, colder, deeper, with a chilling sense of finality. "You can't leave." The air froze. Sarah's heart stopped in her chest, her entire body rigid with fear. The voice wasn't just speaking, it was commanding. It was pulling at them, as though it had them in its grasp. The storm was no longer the storm. The wind was no longer the wind. The voice wasn't an echo. It was something far darker, far older, and it had found them, and now it wasn't going to let them go. The words hung in the air, thick and oppressive. pressing against Sarah's chest like an invisible weight. "You can't leave." The voice was deep, resonating in the very bones of the mountain, chilling her to the core. It felt as if the words themselves had substance, as though they were wrapped in the cold winds, floating like smoke just beyond her reach. Jake was already backing up, his eyes wide with a wild panic that mirrored her own. He shook his head, his voice cracking with disbelief. This can't be happening. It's just the wind. It has to be." But even as he said it, he knew deep down that the air around them felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. Sarah, her breath shallow and ragged, took a step back, her feet unsteady on the snow-covered ground beneath the overhang. The world beyond the cliff was a blur of white, a blank canvas of swirling snow and frozen winds. The storm was still raging, but the silence that had descended upon them felt worse than the storm itself. It was a thick, suffocating kind of silence, one that made her stomach twist and her skin crawl. The darkness of the storm outside had seeped into their thoughts, into their very souls. The overhang, which had once been a refuge from the snow, now felt like a tomb, closing in around them. There was nowhere to run. The wind moaned, its howl rising and falling, a ghostly wail that sent a shiver through Sarah's spine. Her breath formed clouds of fog in the frigid air, but it was the voice echoing through her mind that haunted her. It was a voice she couldn't escape, no matter how she tried to block it out. The words repeated, clearer now, louder than the wind. "You can't leave." She felt the pulse of her own heartbeat in her throat, the fear tightening around her chest like a vice. She glanced at Jake, whose eyes were wide, frantic. He was holding onto his pack like it might somehow protect him, his face pale beneath the layers of snow and frost. The storm was no longer just a storm. It was as if the mountain itself had come alive, sentient and watching them. "You heard that, right?" Jake's voice was ragged, desperate. He was shaking, not from the cold, but from fear, the kind of fear that no amount of logic could explain away. That's not just wind or an echo. That's something else, something out there. Sarah nodded, her mouth dry. Her mind raced, struggling to make sense of what was happening. The world had shifted in an instant. What had once been a simple hike, an escape from the noise of their lives, had turned into something far darker. And now they were trapped in the heart of the mountain with something that wasn't human, wasn't natural, watching them from the shadows. The voice spoke again, but this time it wasn't a command. It was a question. "Do you fear me?" Sarah's stomach dropped. The voice wasn't just repeating their thoughts. It was speaking to them, directly. It was aware of them. It knew them. Jake flinched, as if the words had struck him physically. He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. The storm outside roared louder, and the air in their tiny shelter seemed to grow colder still, biting into their skin. "I fear nothing," Jake finally managed to say, his voice trembling but defiant. "We're not afraid of you." The words felt weak as soon as they left his lips. They didn't even sound like his voice anymore. Stripped of its usual confidence, it cracked under the weight of the atmosphere. Sarah wanted to shout, to scream that they weren't afraid either, but the truth was undeniable. She was terrified, not of the storm, not of the cold, but of the thing, the presence that was waiting just beyond their sight, pulling at the edges of their sanity. The mountain trembled again beneath them. The echo that followed felt as though it vibrated deep in the earth, rattling the stones, shaking the very bones of the mountain. A shadow, no, not a shadow, a shape, dark and shifting, passed in the corner of Sarah's vision, moving with unnatural speed. She turned her head quickly, her eyes scanning the dense white fog beyond the overhang. But there was nothing there. Nothing but the endless swirl of snow and wind. Her pulse quickened, her breath hitching in her throat. Something was out there, something that had been waiting for them. She could feel it watching, could sense its eyes on her, on both of them. And now she realized it wasn't just the storm. That was closing in. It was the thing that had been calling to them. The thing that had been here long before they ever arrived. Jake's voice shattered the silence. "Sarah, I don't think we're alone." His eyes were fixed on something. Behind her, his gaze wild, searching as though trying to find something in the white chaos outside. Sarah turned instinctively, and for the briefest moment, she thought she saw a figure, tall, cloaked in black, its face hidden beneath a hood. It was a flash of movement, barely perceptible, but it was enough to make her stomach churn with dread. "Doe." "You see that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Jake nodded slowly, his lips pressed together in a grim line. "I saw it too." The figure was gone in an instant, swallowed by the snow and wind. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that it hadn't disappeared. It had moved. No, it had shifted, like it was never bound by the same rules as them. The storm outside grew louder, its fury escalating as if the very mountain was awakening, responding to the entity that had made itself known. The voice came again, but now it was different, familiar, like a twisted reflection of something they both knew. "You think you can leave, but you are already mine." The words echoed with such finality that Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The ground beneath them quaked again, but this time it wasn't just a vibration. The rock above them groaned, the stone shifting as though something, no, someone, was moving through the mountain's very core. Jake staggered back, his eyes wide in disbelief. "What the hell is this?" "I don't know," Sarah whispered, her voice shaking. "But I know one thing for sure, we have to get out of here." But the words barely left her lips before another crack rang out through the air. A voice, deep and familiar but twisted, distorted, reached out from the shadows. "You can't leave." The words hit them like a punch to the stomach. "You can't leave." There was no mistaking it now. This was no natural storm, no coincidence of sound and wind. This was something that had been waiting, something ancient and alive, something that had never meant for them to leave. The shadow, no, not a shadow, a presence, was closer now, filling the space around them, suffocating the small shelter beneath the overhang. The wind howled louder, the snow spinning faster, as though the very elements were bent to the will of whatever waited beyond their sight. Sarah's heart thudded in her chest, every beat a reminder of the dread that had been building with each passing second. Jake's face was pale, his eyes wide with fear, but there was something else there too, something deep, something primal, the kind of fear that comes when a person knows they are no longer in control of their fate. "Sarah." His voice was a whisper, hoarse and trembling. "It's not just the storm, is it? We're not alone, not like we thought." He turned, searching the swirling white beyond their shelter, but there was nothing visible. Just snow, just wind, just the weight of the presence. Sarah stood frozen, her breath shallow as she watched him. She could feel it too. The air around them was thick, suffused with a tangible heaviness. The snow that fell so rapidly seemed to have a strange weight to it, like it wasn't just frozen water but something far darker, something tied to the very mountain itself. Suddenly, another tremor ran through the ground beneath their feet. This one was stronger, more insistent. Sarah grabbed Jake's arm to steady herself as the rock above them creaked, groaned, and shifted. The very mountainside seemed to be alive, the stone trembling as if it were a living being responding to something deep within. She could hear it now in the silence between the howling wind, the faintest scraping sound coming from deep within the rock, like claws against stone. "I don't like this," Jake whispered, his voice raw with panic. We need to go. Now. But Sarah couldn't move. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the dark shape that seemed to materialize in the periphery of her vision, flickering in and out like a wisp of smoke. It wasn't a person, not fully. It was more like a shadow wrapped in shadow, a dark figure that seemed to move with unnatural fluidity, slipping between the layers of the storm. Sarah. Jake's voice was desperate now, shaking her from her trance. Look at me. We can't stay here. We have to get out. But even as he said it, a thought tugged at Sarah's mind, something that had been lingering since they first heard the voice. What if they couldn't leave? What if the mountain itself didn't want them to leave? The thought chilled her to the bone. She glanced at Jake, but the look on his face told her he had come to the same terrifying realization. Something in the air shifted, an oppressive weight that pressed down on them from all sides, as though the mountain itself was breathing, watching. Then, a voice. Not the same voice as before. This one was lower, deeper, more malevolent. It seemed to crawl under Sarah's skin, wrapping itself around her like a suffocating shroud. I've been waiting for you. The words were thick with malice, dripping with the kind of malevolence that made the air around them feel charged, like static electricity before a storm. Sarah's chest tightened with terror as the voice seemed to come from every direction. At once, a whisper in the wind, a murmur in the snow. Jake's grip on her arm tightened. What the hell is that? His voice cracked, raw with fear. Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but her voice caught in her throat. The words felt inadequate, meaningless in the face of what they were experiencing. The storm outside wasn't the enemy. The mountain wasn't just a backdrop to their fear. The presence, the thing they had been hearing, the thing that had been calling them, was a part of the mountain itself, tied to its ancient heart. As if on cue, the ground beneath their feet rumbled again, stronger now, almost like an earthquake. The rock around them groaned, and the very cliff they sheltered beneath seemed to shift, as though something far beneath was stirring, awakening from a long slumber. And then, there it was again. The shadow. It was closer now, undeniable in its presence. It flickered between the snowflakes, a dark figure that moved with inhuman speed, slipping between the edges of their vision like a nightmare they couldn't escape. It was watching them. No, waiting for them. Jake backed up further into the rock, his breath quick and shallow. We have to move. We have to run. But Sarah couldn't tear her eyes away from the shifting darkness. The figure. Was it a person? A creature? Something older than the mountains themselves. It was impossible to say, but there was no denying its presence, its intentions. It was waiting for them, to make a mistake, to give it a reason to act. You can't leave, the voice said again, the words so deep and resonant they seemed to come from the bowels of the earth itself. You're already mine. The rocks overhead groaned in response, and the ground trembled again, harder this time. The snow outside swirled in a dizzying frenzy, and the air grew colder, colder than it should have been. The cold wasn't just from the storm. It was something far deeper, something unnatural. The shadow shifted, closer now, moving with a disturbing slowness. It was as if the very mountain had taken form, shaping itself into something that could hunt, something that could feel them. And it wasn't alone. The darkness around them seemed to multiply, taking on shape and substance, filling the space with a terrible sense of foreboding. Every movement they made, every breath they took, felt watched, as though the mountain itself was testing them to see how long they could hold out before breaking. Jake turned to her, eyes wild. We can't just stay here, Sarah. We have to. Run, we have to. But before he could finish, a flash of blackness shot from the corner of her vision, and suddenly the figure was right in front of them. The shadows seemed to split open, revealing nothing but a void. The air was thick, suffocating, and then she saw it. A figure, tall and thin, wrapped in shadow, its face hidden beneath a dark hood. Its eyes, black, endless pits, glistened in the darkness. "I've been waiting for you," the voice repeated, this time echoing not just through the air, but through her very mind. The words were inside her, twisting, crawling through her thoughts like a poison. She tried to scream, but no sound came. The terror that gripped her throat was too tight, too suffocating. The shadow reached out, slow and deliberate. Its presence filled every inch of the small space under the overhang. The air around her seemed to throb, and for a moment she swore the very rock they huddled beneath was alive, a living, breathing thing. The figure's fingers brushed her cheek, cold as ice. But there was something else, a pressure, a crushing weight, pulling at her very soul. The darkness was closing in, and there was no escape. The cold wasn't just physical anymore. It was something deeper, something that sank into the marrow of their bones and twisted through their veins, freezing them from the inside out. The shadow before them loomed, an endless void that seemed to swallow the light. Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't think, only feel. A heavy, insistent pressure pressing against her chest, pushing down until it felt like her ribs might crack under the strain. It wasn't just the weight of the thing standing before them, it was the weight of the mountain itself, alive and aware, feeding on their fear, their desperation. The figure stretched forward, its hands, long, clawed and impossibly thin, reaching for Sarah's face. The air seemed to hum with an oppressive energy, the very stone beneath her feet vibrating as if the mountain was alive, was breathing with them, sharing in this twisted moment. Her legs felt like lead, like they couldn't move even if she tried. The world outside the overhang had disappeared entirely, swallowed by the blizzard, the winds howling, the snow blurring everything into an endless sheet of white. There was no escape. There was nowhere to run. She turned to Jake, desperate for him to act, to do something. His face was pale, his eyes wide with terror, but his body was rooted to the ground. The shadow had paralyzed them both with a terror, so deep it was beyond words. The mountain wasn't just a place they were visiting anymore. It was a trap, a living, breathing entity that had waited for them, had drawn them here with the cold, with the storm, with the promise of the wilderness, and now it wouldn't let them go. The shadow's fingers hovered in the air, inches from her skin, colder than any ice she had ever felt. It was like a vacuum, sucking the warmth out of her very soul, drawing her closer, inch by inch. She could feel herself trembling, shaking, but she wasn't sure if it was the cold, or the thing's touch, or both. And then, in a voice so soft, it was barely a whisper, the shadow spoke again. "You are mine." It was not a command. It was a truth, one that reverberated through her bones and down into the deepest parts of her mind, an undeniable fact. Sarah's vision blurred, the edges of the world dimming, her head swimming with dizziness. Her knees buckled, but she didn't fall. No, the pressure around her was too strong, too suffocating. It wasn't just the shadow pulling at her. It was the mountain itself, like the earth was lashing out, binding her to its will. Jake staggered back a step, his hand reaching out for her. But it was no use. The air between them seemed to thicken, the weight of the mountain pressing down on them, separating them. The sound of the storm, once so fierce and maddening, now faded into nothingness. There was no wind, no snow, no world beyond the rocks. Only the shadow and the crushing, suffocating silence. The figure's hand finally touched her cheek. Cold, so cold, like ice carved from the core of the earth itself. It was unnatural, its skin smooth and slick like polished stone, but not Human. Not anything human. It didn't belong here in the world of flesh and bone. It was ancient, timeless. Something that had existed long before the mountains themselves had taken shape. Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps, the cold seeping into her chest, into her heart, until she felt as though she might stop breathing altogether. But even as her body screamed in protest, as her instincts begged her to flee, she could not move. She was trapped in the grip of something so old, so vast, that she couldn't even begin to comprehend it. The shadow leaned closer, its presence growing, filling the space, its breath icy against her skin. "I've waited for you," it rasped, the voice a low, guttural murmur that seemed to echo within her very bones. "For so long, the mountain calls, and you have answered." It was then, as the last vestiges of her strength drained away, that Sarah understood. The mountain wasn't just a place, it was a creature, a thing with its own hunger, its own need, and it fed on those who wandered too close, who came seeking its solitude, its peace. It was not simply the storm, not just the snow. It was the mountain itself, a force as ancient as the earth, feeding on their fear, binding them to its eternal hunger. Jake's voice broke through the silence, raw and frantic. "Sarah!" He reached for her again, his voice hoarse with desperation. "We have to get out of here. Come on, we have to move." But it was too late. The moment he spoke, the shadow flickered, its presence expanding, wrapping around her like a shroud. She could see it now, feel it, the mountain itself, the deep, eternal darkness that pulsed beneath its stone heart. It was as if the mountain was waking up, stretching its limbs, and they were the prey. And then, with a sudden jolt, the world shifted. The shadow's hand withdrew from Sarah's face, but the change wasn't in the relief of its departure. No. It was as if the earth itself had turned its gaze upon her, as if the very mountain had opened its eyes, and it was now seeing her for what she truly was. She was a part of it, a piece of the puzzle that it had been waiting for, that it had been drawing closer with every passing moment. The voice came again, softer this time, but it held an undeniable certainty. "You are part of me now." Sarah's stomach turned. She wasn't sure if she was going to throw up or scream or simply collapse, but the terror that clawed at her insides told her it didn't matter. She was already ensnared. She could feel it, feel the mountain moving beneath. Her feet, feel its weight pulling her deeper, pulling her into its abyss. Jake grabbed her arm, yanking her, his voice a panicked rasp. "We have to run, Sarah. We can't stay here. We can't stay." But the moment his hand touched hers, the ground beneath them rumbled again, more violently this time, and Sarah was struck with the horrifying realization that they weren't just dealing with an entity, with a force. They were dealing with the very soul of the mountain itself. It had its claws in them now, its grip tightening with every heartbeat. Jake's eyes locked with hers, his face pale with terror. And in that moment, Sarah knew. The mountain wasn't going to let them go, no matter how hard they fought, no matter how much they ran. They were already part of it. They were. It's now. The storm outside raged louder, the wind howling like a mournful cry. But inside the small shelter beneath the cliff, all Sarah could hear was the beating of her own heart, slow and heavy, as the presence pressed in on all sides. The mountain was alive, and it was feeding. The moment stretched like an eternity. Sarah's heart thudded in her chest, each beat echoing like a drum in the depths of the mountain. The sound of the storm outside, the shrieking wind, faded away as if they had stepped into a different world altogether. It was only the hum of the mountain that remained, low and constant, vibrating through the rock, through the air. She could feel it in her bones now, this pulse of the earth, this ancient, unyielding presence that had been waiting for them. They were no longer visitors to these mountains. They were its. Jake's grip on her arm tightened, and for a moment, it was the only real thing left in the world. The warmth of his fingers, the terror in his eyes, the rawness of his voice as he tugged at her. "Sarah, we have to move. Now." But no matter how hard he pulled, it felt like the world around them had grown too heavy, as if they were stuck in some viscous, unseeable force that wouldn't let them go. Sarah's feet felt like they were glued to the ground. Her limbs were shaking, not just from the cold, but from the suffocating weight of the presence surrounding them, pulling at them, holding them in place. The shadow flickered again in the corner of her vision. It wasn't just a shape anymore. It was a thing, a creature, made of pure darkness, moving with an unnatural grace. It slithered between the snowflakes, drawing closer with every passing second, its eyes hidden beneath the hood, its form shifting and warping in the corners of her vision. The darkness wanted them. It was feeding on them, on their fear, their confusion, their helplessness. "Sarah!" Jake's voice was sharper now, desperate. His breath came in ragged gasps, and he pulled harder, but it was no use. She couldn't move. She couldn't do anything but stand there, paralyzed by the weight of the mountain's grip on her. The shadow loomed larger, its form becoming clearer, its body stretching and twisting like smoke, no longer bound by the laws of the physical world. It was the very essence of the mountain itself, a manifestation of its hunger, its desire for souls, for warmth, for life. And it was reaching for them, its long fingers swaying in the air like tendrils of some ancient, unfathomable creature. Its presence pressed in on them, suffocating, consuming. "You belong to me now," the voice echoed, not just in the air but in their minds, a soundless whisper that made Sarah's skin crawl. "You are a part of me." She wanted to scream, to push Jake away and run, but every part of her body refused to obey. Her legs were frozen, her muscles like lead, and the mountain, the presence, it was feeding on her. The cold seeped deeper into her bones, as though the very marrow within her was turning to ice. She closed her eyes, clenching her teeth, and the storm howled around them. But it wasn't enough to block out the voice, the presence that had fully consumed the space between them. She felt it now, a pull deep in her chest, like the mountain was sinking its claws into her very soul, dragging her further into its abyss. Jake's eyes locked with hers, wild and pleading. "Sarah, please, we can't stay here." He tried, again to drag her away, but it was like trying to pull against the very rock itself. It was pointless. There was nowhere to go. And then, something inside Sarah snapped. It wasn't just the cold, it wasn't just the terror. It was something deeper, something tied to her past, something unresolved, something she had been running from for years. The mountain wasn't just pulling at them. It was feeding on them because of them. It was feeding on their guilt. She could feel it now. It wasn't just the shadow, it wasn't just the storm. It was her too. The mountain had drawn them here for a reason. It wasn't just seeking any victims, it had chosen them. Her mind flashed to moments, broken fragments of her life. She saw her mother's face, her father's voice, the emptiness that had followed them since they died, the years of grief and loss, the guilt that had eaten at her like a slow burning fire, the feeling that she had never truly escaped them. The mountain had known that. The presence had felt it. It had sensed her pain, her loneliness, and it had drawn her here, just as it had drawn Jake. It had waited for her to reach the end of her tether, to be so lost, so broken, that she would willingly fall into its grasp. The shadow flickered again, moving closer, and this time Sarah did not fight it. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. She wasn't sure who she was apologizing to anymore. Was it to Jake, to herself, to the memory of her family? She didn't know. All she knew was that the mountain had always been there, buried deep within her, and now it was consuming her, from the inside out. She could feel the pull of it, the way it was tying her to the land, to the stone, to the ancient, inescapable hunger of the earth. Jake's grip on her arm tightened, his eyes full of panic. "Sarah, no. You can't." But it was already too late. The presence was no longer something outside of her. It was in her. It had always been in her. And now it had taken hold of both of them. The shadow reached out, its fingers brushing Sarah's face once more. This time, there was no cold, no pain. Only the pull, the sinking feeling, as if she were falling through the rock, through the earth itself. Her body seemed to shift, to fade, as though she were losing herself to the mountain. Jake tried to pull her back, but his efforts were futile. The stone beneath them rumbled once more, and the earth seemed to open, its gaping maw pulling them in, drawing them closer to the center of the mountain. Sarah could hear Jake shouting, but his voice was distant, muffled, as though the world was closing in on them, swallowing them whole. And then, as the last vestiges of the world outside the overhang faded, as the shadows consumed her mind completely, Sarah realized with a terrible clarity that the mountain was alive. It was not just a place. It was a consciousness, a being, a creature that had existed long before human history had even begun. It had always been waiting for the right souls, for the right pain, for the right loss. And now, it had her. It had them both. The last thing Sarah felt was the silence. The crushing, suffocating silence of the mountain, the quiet that followed the storm that had not passed, but had simply changed. The mountain had claimed them. The darkness engulfed her, not like the quiet of sleep, not like the stillness of night. No, this was something deeper, something far colder, as though the very fabric of time and space had unraveled around her. Sarah's body felt weightless, suspended in some vast, intangible void. Her breath had become shallow, slow, barely there, as though even the act of drawing air was an effort that her body had forgotten how to perform. There were no sounds, not the storm, not the howling wind, or the crackling of the snow outside. It was all gone. There was only the hum, the deep, persistent hum of the mountain itself. It throbbed beneath her skin, through her veins, filling her mind, suffusing every part of her with its ancient presence. The mountain had taken them, both of them. But where were they now? Were they alive? Were they dead? Her mind struggled to grasp the reality of it, the impossibility of what had happened. She felt the mountain's pulse in her chest, slow, steady, unyielding. It was as if the stone itself had replaced her heart, a cold, lifeless thing, an object devoid of warmth, of feeling. And yet she felt it, she knew it. The stone was inside her, in her blood, in her thoughts, like a parasite feeding on her awareness. It was too much to bear. Her mind rebelled against the sensation. Her instincts screamed to flee, to fight, but there was nowhere to go. The mountain had closed in around them, and now it was waiting for them to fade. A figure, a shadow. She could see it, though her eyes were closed, though her body was motionless. It loomed in the distance, faint, undefined, but there, nonetheless. It was like a memory, like a ghost, something familiar, something she should know. The figure reached for her, and even in this place, she could feel it, a pull toward it, an inevitable draw. "Jake," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if the words made any sound. Was she even speaking, or was she only thinking? The air around her seemed to press in as if to drown her words, to silence her. But then, a voice. Not the deep, gravelly voice from before. No, this was different. It was familiar. It was Jake. "Sarah," the voice rasped, distant but unmistakable. His voice. She wasn't imagining it. She wasn't alone. She wasn't completely swallowed by the mountain yet. Jake. Her throat tightened with the effort of speaking, as though the very act of trying to connect to the outside world was a struggle against the mountain's will. And then there was movement. The shadow, the figure, whatever it was, shifted, pulling her toward it with an invisible force, dragging her through this vast, suffocating void. She wanted to resist. She wanted to scream. But her body, so heavy with the mountain's weight, refused to obey. It felt like she was being pulled from one reality into another, each step, each breath, a heavy, burdensome act. The shadow solidified before her, and it was no longer vague, no longer a distant idea. It was Jake. But he wasn't right. He looked wrong. His eyes were sunken, his skin too pale, too thin. He was fading, just like her. "Jake," she whispered again, her voice trembling, echoing in the silence. "What's happening? What are we?" But Jake didn't answer. He only looked at her with hollow eyes, eyes that seemed to see through her, to see into the very depths of the earth itself. His mouth opened, but no sound came out, only the faintest rustling, like the whisper of wind in the trees, the faintest memory of something long forgotten. And then she understood. Jake wasn't really there. He was a part of the mountain too. The mountain had claimed them both, drawing them into this suffocating silence. She wasn't hearing him. She wasn't speaking to him. She was hearing the echo of him. The mountain had taken his soul just as it had taken hers. They were no longer flesh. They were no longer human. They were now part of the mountain's endless hunger. Their bodies, their spirits, were part of the dark, living rock that would remain here forever. Her chest tightened. Panic clawed at her throat. The realization was a suffocating weight, an unbearable truth. They weren't going to leave. There was no way out. The mountain had no exit. It wasn't a place. They were part of it now. A part of its eternal, timeless hunger. "You are mine now." The voice came again, this time in unison with the beating of her heart, as though the very words were woven into her very essence. She wanted to scream, she wanted to rip herself free, but there was nothing left of her to fight with. She was no longer Sarah. She was no longer Jake. She was a part of the mountain now, a reflection of its hunger, its pain, its need. And then with a terrible clarity, Sarah saw it. The thing that had been waiting for them all along. It was not the shadow, not the figure of Jake that had been in front of her. No, it was deeper than that. It was the mountain itself. The mountain was not just alive. It was the echo of something older, far older than the earth itself. It was a force, a presence that had existed long before human history had ever taken shape. A hunger that had never been sated, a consciousness that had been sleeping beneath the stone, beneath the rock, feeding on the lost and the broken. It was a living thing, waiting to be fed, waiting to be awakened by those who came seeking peace, seeking solitude. And it had found them. It had found Sarah and Jake. The figure of Jake before her flickered, like a shadow that was fading. She reached out, but her hand passed right through him. The weight in her chest grew heavier, the pressure from the mountain's pull relentless, suffocating. She understood now. The mountain didn't just take, it absorbed. Her mind spun as the dark whispers of the mountain, of the entity that controlled. It filled her thoughts. She could feel the tendrils of its power reaching deep into her mind, tearing through the remnants of her consciousness. And as the darkness of the void surrounded her, it all became clear. The mountain did not need her, so it was feeding on the essence of who she was, her fear, her grief, her loss. She had been broken, and now the mountain would claim every fractured part of her until there was nothing left but an echo, the echo of her voice, the echo of Jake's, the echo of every soul that had ever been claimed by this ancient eternal hunger. And Sarah understood that she too had become part of the mountain's story, forever. The silence that enveloped Sarah now was not just empty, it was suffocating. The darkness had swallowed the remnants of her mind, the echoes of Jake's voice, the very fabric of the world she had once known. There was only the vastness of the mountain now, stretching endlessly, its cold fingers wrapped tightly around her spirit, claiming her as one of its own. In the deep recesses of the mountain, Sarah could still hear the pulse. The heartbeat of the earth, slow and steady, vibrating through her bones, syncing with the rhythm of her own breath. It was impossible to escape, as if the mountain had woven itself into the very essence of her being. The pull of it, the weight of its presence, was so heavy, so unyielding, that she had long since stopped fighting. There was no point. She was part of it now. But then, something flickered within her. A faint, distant memory, a whisper of the person she had once been, the fleeting sense of who she was before this, before the mountain had claimed her. It was so faint, so fragile, like a dream that was already slipping away upon waking. Jake. His name, barely a thought, reverberated in the dark corners of her mind. She had heard him. His voice had been real, hadn't it? The terror in his eyes, the desperation in his touch, those had been real. But the shadows had taken him too, just as they had taken her. Her chest tightened with an aching grief. Was he lost like her now? Was he still somewhere in the dark corners of this vast, alive thing? Or had he already been consumed, his soul turned to dust by the insatiable hunger of the mountain? The thought of him, of their shared humanity, was the last tether that held her to the world she had known, the last piece of herself that had not yet been claimed. It flickered, a single spark in the void, before it too began to fade, slowly, like the last embers of a dying fire. But then there was a shift. The heartbeat of the mountain grew louder, almost deafening now. The pull on her spirit intensified. The mountain moved. No, it wasn't the mountain. It was the presence, the ancient living force beneath the stone. It had noticed the flicker of her resistance, and now it was rushing to claim it, to stamp out the last remnants of her will. But as the weight of its power pressed in around her, something inside Sarah stirred. A voice. It was hers. A sound so faint, so fragile, she almost couldn't believe it. But it was there. It was the last echo of herself, the last bit of her that hadn't yet been consumed by the mountain's hunger. She could hear it calling from somewhere deep, within her, rising from the abyss. I am still here. Her chest felt tight, but she could feel it. A spark, a glimmer of light pushing through the suffocating darkness. Her voice, her will was still alive. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to fight back, even just for a moment. And in that moment, something cracked. The grip of the mountain loosened, just slightly, enough to let a sliver of space open between its grasp and the echo of Sarah's soul. She could see, just for an instant, the shadows retreating from her vision. The storm that had raged outside, the fierce wind and the biting cold had softened, just a touch, as if the mountain had grown aware of her resistance. Sarah's body, though still imprisoned by the mountain's will, began to feel lighter. Her thoughts began to focus again, to center on one single thing: the connection to Jake, to her own past, to the life she had once led. She realized with a flash of clarity that the mountain did not simply feed on those who came to it. It fed on the loss, the grief, the pain of those it claimed. It thrived on remembrance. The more she clung to the memory of who she had been, the stronger the mountain's grip would become. But if she could let go, if she could release the last remnants of her past, perhaps then the mountain would lose its power over her. Her heart, no longer a real organ, no longer a human thing, beat with an urgency she couldn't fully understand. The grip around her spirit was still there, still heavy and cold, but now it seemed to waver. It was as though the mountain, the entity, was confused, uncertain, suddenly unsure of its claim. The shadow flickered again, stronger now, as if it were trying to reform itself, to find its purchase in the fissures of Sarah's consciousness. But Sarah's will began to grow, despite the odds, despite the mountain's hunger, despite its ancient consuming power. She thought of Jake again, of his warmth, his life, the memories of their time together, their friendship, their shared laughter, all of it. It filled her mind with a blinding clarity, a clarity she had not allowed herself to feel since the storm had first descended upon them. I am still here. With a force she did not know she had, Sarah let go. She released the grief, the guilt, the pain. She let them fall away, like leaves in the wind, scattered and gone, until all that was left was the echo of her own voice. In that instant, the mountain shuddered. The ground trembled beneath her, as if something, someone, had struck at its very core. A wave of energy, not dark but bright, pulsed through her. It was a fleeting moment, but it was enough. The presence, the shadow, the mountain, everything shook, as though the very fabric of it was unraveling. And then, just as quickly as it had come, the presence was gone. The hum, the heartbeat, the suffocating weight, all of it vanished. The stone that had once pressed in on her chest seemed to lift. The storm outside, the one that had raged so violently, faded into a quiet, still calm. The darkness retreated. Sarah opened her eyes. The storm had passed. She was standing at the edge of the overhang once again, as if no time had passed at all. The blizzard had ended, and the world beyond was vast and still, bathed in the pale light of dawn. She looked around, disoriented, her breath coming in shallow, gasping bursts. The snow beneath her feet was untouched, pristine, and the air, though cold, felt clean. There was no shadow, no figure standing beside her, just the wind howling faintly as it swept through the mountains. But in the distance, she thought she saw something, just a flicker of movement, a figure, so faint and far away that it could have been a trick of the light. She blinked, and it was gone. The mountain had released her. But she knew, deep down, that it was never truly over. The mountain had claimed her once, and perhaps someday it would come again. But for now, she was free.